Mission First Tactical is the official tactical accessories provider for the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Use the code LEADHEAD for an exclusive 20% discount on all orders.
Lead heads, welcome back to another episode of the Talking Lead podcast, where we have been leducating the uneducated since 2012. And our guests today have pretty much been a part of the show since the beginning, and I will introduce them in just one moment. If you didn't get an opportunity, make sure you go back to the previous episode where we had Don Bentley on, and Don is a New York Times best-selling author, and he's got a new book out. He has started writing the Vince Flynn novels, and his Capture or Kill is the new Vince Flynn novel that's out, and Don has taken the helm on that. Former Apache pilot, former FBI SWAT agent. We had a good conversation with Don, so make sure you go check out that episode. This episode, I'm bringing in, like I said, some longtime supporters of the show, and kind of helped us launch in the very beginning. We've got Mike Sodini and Rob Pincus join us, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in, guys.
What's happening, man? How are you?
Good to be here. Yeah, like inaugural year, original Leadhead. Proud to be back.
That's right. Rob's been with us since the very beginning, and Mike too. I mean, for that fact, that's back when Mike was with Eagle Imports. That's been a long time ago, but Mike is now heading up a nonprofit called Walk the Talk America, which is focusing on bridging the gap between the mental health industry and the firearms industry and bringing more education to both sides as they're willing to accept it. As we're gonna talk about that, and they've got some new projects and some goals that we're going to talk about. Rob is also on the board of Walk the Talk America. And these two gentlemen also happen to be involved with a firearms company called Avidity Arms, which I know a lot of you longtime lead heads, Rob's teasing it right there. We talked about the PD10. There it goes. And it is out. It is available. It's about a year and a half now it's been out?
Yep, been shipping for about 18 months.
About 18 months. So brand new baby boy that they got there. And we're going to talk about that and a couple other things they got going on with Avidity. So we got a lot to talk about, gentlemen. So welcome into the show.
We're off to a great start.
If you guys want to go to the bathroom, I can literally talk for the next hour. It'll be fine.
Go ahead. Get your drinks ready.
Hi, I'm Rob, and I'm drinking a Monster.
Hey, we got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to talk about today. Right before we come onto the show, of course, we have another tragedy, so that just kind of takes the thunder out of what we were doing. But
and that's going to kind of lead us into our segment of the jackwagon train. So, Gunny, bring that train in. Train is on fire today, guys.
Hoorah, Semper Fi, do or die, hold 'em high at 8th and I. It is time for the Talking Lead Jackwagon of the Week, so brace yourself, baby.
Brace yourself indeed, because we have jackwagons galore this episode. But before we hit the big one here that Mike was alluding to, I'm going to start us off with this one. Just kind of lighten the load a little bit, so to speak. I don't know if you guys heard about that. I think he was a naval officer. There was a picture posted on social media. I'll share the picture here for everybody to look at. It'd probably ring a bell. So,
alarm bells. That rings alarm bells.
Alarm bells galore. So, this guy that's on the screen right now, let me get his official title here. I got so many freaking windows open. This is from the AP News. Stars and Stripes shows Cameron Yaste. How would you say that? Yahtzee? Yazte. He's a commanding officer.
Yaste, no?
Yaste could be, yeah. Instead of taste, we'll say Yaste. The destroyer USS John McCain. He's firing a rifle with a backwards scope on it. And don't know the context to this. I mean, maybe it was a bet. I mean, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I don't know. But he lost his command of the ship because of this photo.
Is that true?
It is true. The commander,
I saw where he was relieved of command.
Yeah,
but I did not see a direct connection to the photo.
Well, they're not attributing it to the photo, but it was soon after this photo. So it says here from the AP, the commander of a Navy destroyer that's helping protect the San Diego-based aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt in the Middle East has been relieved of duty about 4 months after he was seen in a photo firing a rifle with a scope mounted backward, which is that photo there.
I don't, just to me, it's like if an aircraft mechanic posted a picture of himself on the internet sitting inside of a helicopter, like with his hands on the wrong controls.
Right.
They like, that's not his job. Like this guy commands a destroyer. Like that's, I remember when this picture originally circulated and I was just kind of scrolling and I'd see it show up and people were like, I can't believe this dumb, expletive, whatever. I just thought it was the horrible shooting position, the foregrip being all the way back. I didn't even notice until like the 10th time I saw the picture that the scope was backwards because there was so much else kind of silly about it.
Yeah.
But I find it hard to believe.
The very first thing I noticed was, like you said, with his whole stance with it. But the reason his stance is that way is because he's got the scope backwards and he's having to get up on the scope. What
if some, I don't even know if that's a military issue scope at this point. Right. And like the way it's set up with the forward, the traditional front side, like, I don't even know if that's something that's in the inventory, but let's assume it is for a second. I almost, when I figured out it was the back scope, I almost felt like with the glasses and the whole commander thing, I wonder if the guy like saw it and like two, petty officers or whatever were like, "Oh, you're an idiot. Well, yeah, but what if the ship were attacked? We'd all die." And he's like, "Well, maybe, but I think I could still." And the commander's like, "Give me that rifle, son. Let me show you. You don't need to scope mounted properly if you know how to shoot." And then he was like shooting at a Coke can they threw over.
Very well.
Yeah, a whale.
But again, I don't know.
That's what I envisioned.
We don't know the context. Like it could have been a bet. Also, he's like, "Yeah, I could hit a target with the scope backwards."
I can get it. Let's get some dolphin, boys.
Meat on the table.
What if he has a strange stigma in his eyes, and that's the way he sees it better?
His eyes could be backwards.
That's right.
Probably all the more reason why he shouldn't be commanding a destroyer.
Right. Like that's it. Like all of a sudden, that revealed the truth that the guy's eyes are completely screwed up, and therefore he was relieved of command. That seems more likely. Or he was relieved of command because he literally smacked some enlisted men and took his rifle and said, "Let me show you how it's done." And I just can't believe the picture alone is the thing.
Or whoever the government has the contract with, the rifle or the scope, said, "Fuck no, you got to get rid of this guy. We're not going to give you any more guns."
Well, now I'm super I'm actually curious. And maybe people think I should know this, but sorry, I don't have my finger on the pulse of naval destroyer shipboard security tools. Much less why they would have a scoped rifle with a front sight inventory like that. But is that military issue equipment at this point? There's no slip. It just seems weird.
That's so that it makes the shooting the pirates more challenging because it's just too easy.
I feel like that's not how they do it, though.
That's not how they do it.
from the books I've read.
Yeah. I don't know. But there you go. So this guy, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have seen this photo. If you haven't, watch the video. If you're not listening or watching us on Rumble, watch us on Rumble because that's where you can watch our videos. But bless his heart, whatever the case is, whether they were pranking him or, it was a bet. I mean, he's actually shooting because you can see the case. The case is flying in the air there.
Well,
so he's actually pulling the trigger and shooting.
The whole thing could be AI at this point.
Well, that's true.
Like all you need is like, I support Kamala 2024, and then everybody would know it was AI.
If that's what my shirt said, somebody could superimpose that on my shirt right now.
What's superimpose mean?
Superimpose?
No,
that's AI. That was
movie reference. I'm super old. Let it go.
Photoshop.
Sodini got that reference.
I don't think he did.
It flew right over my head, brother. What movie was that? Now I'm curious.
In the comments, answer in the comments. If you know what movie that was from, I will send you some Avidity swag.
There you go. So email Rob at what's your new email?
Rob at Avidity Arms. No, put it in the comments. What do you mean? Aren't there going to be comments underneath this? Can they do that on the internet?
They can, but I don't ever check comments on this.
Okay. Rob at avidityarms.com. First one in my inbox that gets the movie reference. Although nowadays people can Google it. There's no such thing as a good bar bet anymore. Honor system, don't Google it, people.
Everything, unless that's something that they're banning on Google,
Actually, it's well, now they'll be able to find it.
And they don't want you to have because Google, because they filter everything. So that's my jackwagon. You guys got a jackwagon? Who's your jack?
That's the clue. The goat said it.
Who's your jackwagon, Rob?
Wow. I really feel like it's kind of going to be Harris though for the next like 8 weeks, isn't it? How many more weeks till the election? Just the things that are being said, the crazy and predictable. It's just talking. It's just insert whichever candidate is running for the Democrats that are just going to say things that aren't
true.
Like, I don't know. I don't get it. Aren't even feasible, aren't logical, aren't factual when it comes to firearms. Like and I get it. Like Trump, everybody knows I'm not like the big Trump fan. And Trump says some ridiculous things about guns over the years as well, but literally everything that comes out as a talking point. So I guess that's low hanging fruit though. But that's the only thing that's jumping in my mind, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
and every person on the internet who says you can't sell a single stack 10+1 gun nowadays, while the Glock 43X and 48 are the two most popular selling guns in the country. They've been my jackwagons for 18 months.
Well, that's our fact to fight the myth. So we'll bring that up when we do the fact to fight the myth.
All right, deal.
But you, Michael, you got a jackwagon? Who's your jackwagon?
I agree with Rob. After what I just read with what this administration just put out after the tragedy today, I think we're going to see a lot of that. So,
well, that is so. Talk about so our listeners. This just happened right before we started recording. Today is September the 4th. So there was a school shooting in Georgia. 4 dead, 9 reported injured so far. That's what we know so far. I mean, it's still early on. We just found out the shooter's name. It's a 14-year-old kid. So I'm sure it's going to end up being some sort of bullying or something like that that's been happening with this kid. But who knows? I mean, we'll find out. I'm already hearing, the left's blaming the gun. I'm hearing mental health. I've seen several interviews with professionals on, talking about mental health. It's a mental health issue. We got to, beef up our mental health awareness in this country. So that's the two things that I'm hearing so far. The two go-tos for these mass shootings. What about you guys? Have you heard anything differently?
No, it's a small community in Northeast Georgia. It's actually the county next to the county that I graduated from high school in Northeast Georgia. And it looks like he was a student there. And that's really all that's come out. And as everybody knows, it's always an asterisk in the first couple of hours is, we'll learn more. I think that those 2 points are very likely to be very accurate. The idea that it is a 14-year-old student at that school. But the rest of it's kind of all speculation at this point. And probably kick it back to Mike because I think he feels the same way I do. I am glad that mental health gets brought up. I just don't like it when mental health gets brought up as a throwaway line.
Yeah. in every situation like this, it's really interesting. It's like a lot of times we get upset when we hear what I guess the opposition wants or people that are anti-gun want. And I look at those opportunities as this makes a case for what Walk the Talk America does, right? So it's like I don't shy away from any of these things. I think it makes what Walk the Talk America does more important. And that's why a light should be shined on it. Because if you look at what they're recommending or what, the administration is recommending right now, it's the same old things that we've had forever or we've talked about forever that won't save one more life. I'm not into feel good legislation, but pass a national red flag law, invest in violence prevention programs, right? We have that with our Kids the Kings program. Require safe storage of firearms, ban assault weapons and high capacity magazines, and universal background checks. So it's the same.
Well, another buzzword that's popped up today in these talking head shows that are on is red flag laws is also has been just chatter, red flag laws.
What nobody ever wants to talk about, though, is the fact that no red flag law in the entire country requires the involvement of a mental health professional. And the problem is, even when Mike and I go around and Jake, one of our other most active members of the Walk Talk America family, who's a mental health professional, he even has shied away from this for a long time. Like, well, we don't want to force mental health professionals into this hard choice kind of thing. But at the end of the day, red flag laws have nothing to do with mental health issues in this country. They are subjectively applied laws based on layman's impressions of someone's behavior without any specific threats to themselves or anyone else, because law enforcement already has tools for that. These are subjective interpretations of someone's behavior possibly being dangerous that are put before a judge or a magistrate. The order is issued and then guns are taken, but in no law, not a single law across the country, I think there's 28 states now that have the red flag laws in one way or another, is mental health involvement required. And I've never seen a proposed federal law where a mental health practitioner would be required to evaluate the person who's being subjected to the order, much less give them help for whatever the perceived problem is. So even putting red flag laws in the same space or in the space occupied by mental health initiatives is bullshit.
So are the red flag laws just apply to firearms?
That's it. The only restriction is you can't have a firearm. Like, they don't take away your knives, they don't take away weapons, whatever. But that's a tiny little, that's a gun culture kind of, I think, thing to talk about. In the bigger picture, the important thing here I think people have to understand is that in no way is there a provision for the person who is supposedly a danger to themselves or others given an evaluation or help under the order. And a lot of people have now started when they're confronted with that, people are pro red flag. Well, the judge could order those things, but that would be like the judge ordering that in a divorce case. The judge could say, okay, you need anger management if you're going to have access to see your kids based on the evidence presented to me. And it's just a court order. It has nothing to do with the provisions of the law.
Well, and Rob, the point you just make too is like, you have to get in front of that judge eventually.
Right.
You're not getting in front of that judge that night. Right. Like,
right.
By what we're saying here is, okay, let's humor the situation and say someone is in crisis. They're going to need mental health treatment. They're going to need to be able to talk to somebody or see somebody, and they're going to need to be prevented not only from firearms, but from everything else that they could be destructive with. To me, coming into the house and being like, okay, we're taking your firearms out, but all those other things that you listed, leaving them with those things, and not a path to say like, okay, is he okay?
And that's what law enforcement has. Law enforcement has involuntary commitments at their disposal. Remember the kid that shot up he wasn't a minor, but the young guy who shot up the grocery store in New York State a couple of years ago, he was taken in, he was evaluated, and he was released and deemed to be fine and not a threat to himself or others, within, I think it was like 9-10 months before the actual shooting. But the police used involuntary commitment to bring him in because they were concerned about him. Now, I don't know that mental health practitioner has ever been held accountable for that. I don't know that that's ever really been discussed much publicly because it's not where people want to focus. But, there's the missed moment where intervention potentially could have been had. And then you have to ask, well, was it, a government employee at a state hospital that just kind of checked the box and didn't want to mess with it? Or was it somebody that really They can document, here's the test we gave, here's the evaluations we gave, and here's why we cut this kid loose. And those are the questions I want answered.
Yeah, but they're not tracking that, so there's no way for us to know that.
The governor's office in Colorado, I spend a lot of time with the Firearms Injury Prevention Initiative in Colorado, which is a coalition of both gun community people and outside of the gun community, a lot of health practitioners, mental and physical health practitioners who are involved, obviously, in reducing negative outcomes, injuries with firearms of any type. And we had a representative from the governor's office come in. We had a couple of representatives from the attorney general's office and the governor's office in Colorado give presentations and give us updates. And I've asked repeatedly, that's always my question is, do you track, can you give me numbers for how many people have had these orders served and subsequently been deemed by a mental health professional to actually be a danger to themselves, others, or to have some condition that needed treatment, or even a record of evaluation? Zero record is kept. They've never, and I've asked in other states as well, I've never been given any report, let alone report that would indicate that, okay, maybe this is doing some good. And I think that's really the problem is if at least if there were a mental health evaluation, then we could say, okay, are these things addressing real problems, or are these things just being used and abused as de facto gun control? The reality is, as soon as you start to institute that, you have the conversation with lawmakers, or you say, well, or even anti-gun people, you say, well, why don't you advocate for mental health evaluations to be involved? Everybody falls back to the same thing that I just said. There's already that mechanism in law enforcement. We already have involuntary commitments when there's specific threats. And it's like, okay, so we don't need red flag laws. Got it. But it's still the main talking point.
It looks like there's 23, according to this report here, that have the red flag laws, and they're the ones in red that you see there.
And it may be that I saw some of the other proposed laws in the last report, because this is a talking point that a lot of people that are really truly interested in reducing negative outcomes, we keep coming back to is anybody even suggesting the requirement of a mental health evaluation? And then, of course, the question of funding comes up, and, is the county going to pay for it? Is the state going to pay for it? Does the individual have to pay for it, which would obviously be ridiculous? Does the reporting party have to pay for it? Who has to pay for this? Evaluation is one of the things that always comes up. And it's like, well, if it's not important enough to find the money in the budget, then let's stop infringing on people's rights.
Well, it should be insurance. I mean, that's why we pay for insurance, right?
And we are finally starting to see some movement in that area. Talk about the real issues of mental health in our country. We are finally, over the last couple of years, starting to see some, basic type health insurance plans cover mental health assessments, just like it would cover a dental cleaning or annual blood work for a physical, to kind of check in and see where you are. And I think that's a great thing that more and more people need to take advantage of. Of course, that's still fear-mongered in our community. Like, oh, don't do it because they'll turn you in.
The idea of bringing on and procuring the farm-to-table beef aspect was high on my list. Being a third-generation farmer, I really focused on the elements of how healthy my life was and needed to be, and I wanted to send that same message and bring that same value to the consumers that are outside. So Whiskey River Beef came to fruition at the beginning of 2023, and here we are today.
Go to whiskeyriverbeef.com today to order. Visit us on Instagram at Whiskey River Life and on Facebook at Whiskey River Beef LLC. Whiskey River Beef is a proud sponsor of the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Use the code TalkingLead10 for 10% off all orders.
So the Georgia shooting, let's see if we got any updates here. Looks like it's still 4 and 9, and here's the 14-year-old. They gave his name too, which I didn't think they were allowed to do for a minor, but they did give his name. 2 students and 2 teachers were killed in a shooting at Appalachia High School in Winder, Georgia. Another 9 victims were taken to the hospital with injuries. The suspect, 14-year-old, I'm not going to say his name, was encountered by officers within minutes and immediately surrendered and was taken into custody. He will be charged with murder and will be tried as an adult. So it's moving forward there, and there's more on it. So,
do you see? I haven't seen anything yet on weapon use. That's always a.
I've heard an AK. Again, that was these news sources trying to be first to get the word out, but there was one news, I think it was Fox, that said 2 students came up to her and they said it was an AK. Which, with all the video games and things out now, I think probably the students will probably be more apt to identify a firearm than the news people. I was quickly going through here and see if I see anything about that. I'm sure they're going to withhold that till the very last.
Mike, have you been involved in anything specific to the state of Georgia?
No, not really. Nothing from any kind of official standpoint. Obviously, there's coalitions and stuff like that are interested in what we do, but actually, we're kind of starting to ramp that up with the Kids to Kings program, because that's where that takes place in Georgia. But that's a whole separate animal than this active shooter school shooting situation.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the mass shootings that happen every day, right?
Right, yeah. That if we talk about, we're racist.
Right.
Well, and again, we were talking before we started, is like, okay, the election's coming up. There hasn't been, a widely covered school shooting in a while. And I think everybody was just kind of waiting for it to happen. And then boom, here it is all of a sudden, just like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to make a point to people right now, and I hate this. I hate the fact that my phone blows up on days like this, and it's been blowing up like all morning. Like everybody's been texting me, right? Like, oh, your day just got more interesting. This is why the gun industry, we can't stop when it slows down. Like we should have already been putting all of these programs in place, and if it's not Walk the Talk America programs, it's whatever programs. I feel like sometimes we get lazy when nothing happens. Then something bad happens, and then everybody wants to talk. That's when the manufacturers reach out to me and say, oh, we really should work with you on something, right? Like this is all the 6 months where there was nothing. That's where we should have kept going. That's the sad part. I hate that, Walk the Talk America gets the attention when these things happen. It shouldn't be like that. We're doing good.
It's always reactionary. There's never any, like you said, pre-thought to it. It's always reactionary instead of being proactive, which everybody's had the opportunity to do that before this shit happens. And it's not too late. They could do it now. The fact that they're reaching out to you, take advantage of that. And okay, let's get something going with you guys.
Yeah, I do think that's important. Capitalizing on the opportunity to reach people is incredibly important. So when you see people, this is, for the audience out here, when you see people talking about mental health and potentially, fear mongering it or seeing it as an attack against the gun community, which, believe me, I get it. For some people it is. Like I said, they lump red flag laws in with mental health support, which it really isn't. Steer them towards WTTA, steer them to WTTA.org and let them see some of the very obviously gun owner friendly Second Amendment supportive initiatives that we're involved in and the coalition of groups that we work with and the resources that exist. There are plenty of them out there. And it's really important that we take these moments when our side, when somebody says maybe as a superficial throwaway or as a distraction, when they say, yeah, why don't they focus on mental health? Say, well, actually, good point. Are you focusing on mental health or are you familiar with WTTA? Help other people realize that saying mental health isn't enough. We have to do things that are also not going to be really weaponized attacks against gun ownership. And I think this is an opportunity for us. I actually just, when I picked up the phone, I had a note from one of our school attacker response course instructors, that SARC program back after Sandy Hook, when it was really kind of going viral and we had a lot of traction with it. One of the places that we did a instructor development course was in Northeast Georgia. And one of the instructors just reached out and was talking about getting in front of the school system. And it's like, well, today is probably not the day, like I get it, but yes, there's going to be more and more people interested in more and more school systems interested in things like school attacker response course or Faster Saves Lives or any of the other programs that are out there because this happened. It's not bad to take advantage of that moment to reach people because like Mike's saying, people aren't going to be interested in 4 months. Let's hope they're interested in 4 months because that'll mean we had 4 quiet months. If they're interested next week, let's get involved.
Yeah. So what are you guys' thoughts on, everybody's trying to come up with a solution for this. It's ban the guns, it's the mental health, it's harden the schools. what do you feel about, and it's happened in the last couple of cases, holding the parents accountable for these kids? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that the parents should be held accountable in some degree? I think
anytime you leave unauthorized access to your firearm, you should be held accountable if your kid has access. He's a 14-year-old kid. I mean, it's common sense, right? Like that. To me, I do think there should be a punishment if you allow your child. I have 2 daughters that are very familiar with firearms. I don't trust them, and I don't trust their friends. Right. So I can't have unauthorized access to firearms. I don't know how this kid got his gun. I don't want to speculate. You know, the parents maybe not even guilty here, right? Like this could be, he got it from a friend or whatever, but absolutely.
Got it somehow, some way illegally because he's 14 years old and he wasn't allowed to own one himself. So,
I mean, there are states where, you know, minors can still possess guns or have access to guns with their parents' permission or supervision. And I imagine Georgia is one of them. Certainly when I lived there and I was a minor, I had access to guns. I bought my first guns with my own money. You know, my dad bought them, but they ended up very quickly passing to my possession when I lived in Georgia and was going to high school there. And obviously laws have changed and, you know, I'm super old now, but I think Georgia, you could still possess a gun as a minor. But I fully agree with the accountability. And I've been on the record with this for a long time, but there's also that window of, is this kid a competitive shooter? Is this kid a hunter? Is he out with his dad all the time? Is this a gun that they use for hunting? It's hunting season's coming up. Were they out at the range zeroing the rifle and dad normally locks it up, but he left it out? Or is this a rifle that normally lives in the kid's bedroom and it's legal in Georgia and the parents never saw this coming, right? I think the Michigan's a perfect example, and people need to be celebrating the prosecutions in Michigan, even in the gun community. And here's why. Those parents were convicted because of their direct involvement, culpability, negligence in a couple of different ways with the killings that happened in that school, in the Oakland County school. And the other thing about that is there is now, but there was no mandatory storage law in Michigan at the time. So they were not convicted under a special firearms storage law, which again is one of the administration talking points right now is mandatory firearm storage laws. You don't need them. And Michigan proves it. Michigan explicitly proves you don't need it. And I don't think a firearm storage law was involved in the conviction in Illinois either with that 4th of July parade shooter from a few years ago. So we have certainly the Michigan, the mother and the father who were convicted because of the things they did, which I think any reasonable gun owner would agree and any parent should agree. They were negligent and they were culpable and they didn't commit the crimes. They contributed to the commission of those murders. And they were held accountable for it and they were convicted, but it was done without any special laws. And this is something we should be talking about very loudly in the gun community.
No, I agree. And, you know, to your point and whatever's going to happen with this guy, I mean, again, I don't know if it was his parents or a friend or whoever, you know, is responsible for the negligence of that gun getting into this kid's hands should be held accountable. So and I think it's, you know, that's something that we could look at also is if as a firearm owner, people are actually holding you accountable for someone else's actions with your gun, then yes.
I think this is really, I think this is where some of the deep nuanced conversation can come in, right? One of the things that I think we need is more intervention, period, like with people who care about other people, not intervention from people who don't care, right? Like a red flag law from like a coworker that's mad at you, or a red flag law from like your neighbor who saw you with a gun and doesn't think anybody should have guns. I think
when you with red flag law.
Yeah. Like I'm talking about our friends, our coworkers that we do care about, our fellow gun owners, people we know from the range, people we just know on the internet. If they're saying something that's throwing flags out, like literal flags, not legislative red flag, but if we need to be able to reach out comfortably and say, I'd rather be wrong. Like I've reached a point in my life, I would rather say the uncomfortable, hey man, are you doing okay? And when they look at me like, why would you ask that? I'll say, well, you know, you lost your job, your truck broke down, your dog died, you're a country music song, bro. Like, let me, like, what's going on? Like, are you okay? And I'd rather have the guy say I'm intruding in his life and I'm asking too many questions and leave him alone. And I was completely wrong. And he's super happy and has a new dog and a new girlfriend and he's buying a new truck and he's great, than not have asked the question if it occurs to me. And I think that goes especially for inside of the family. I think with teenage kids, we need to be more involved. I think we shouldn't be afraid of offending or pushing away. We just need to be more involved in each other's lives. And that's where the real mental health and the real support and the real red flags are going to get followed up on. And I don't see any other way to change what's happening in our culture than to be more like nosy, be more involved, like introduce yourself to your neighbors.
Right. Well, introduce yourself to your kids. You know,
well, yeah. And maybe pick up the phone that you're paying for and see what your kids are saying and doing on it. Like, that's not wrong. That's like that's called parenting. And if you think that's invasion of privacy, go to a parenting class, because it's not.
Yeah, I agree. So, Walk the Talk America. You guys started this how many years ago now?
We started in 2018.
2018. Yeah. And you've been gaining the momentum ever since. And we just had the opportunity, all of us, to hook up and talk a little bit at the Goals in Knoxville, which it was a great event. I had a little follow-up episode on that a couple episodes back. And, being their first event, we thought they did an excellent job. It was phenomenal for their first time out. Obviously, there's room for improvement and things that they could do, but a great event. And I like the small feel of it too. That's kind of what I liked about it. But eventually, these things keep growing and growing and growing. But hopefully they can, contain it and keep it and give it that small feel. But being in Knoxville, the location, how did you guys feel about that?
I liked it. I mean, it's convenient for me because it's like 2 hours from the factory here. So it was great. And I didn't really spend any time in downtown Knoxville for a while. So, I mean, I don't know if you remember, that was where you did a class back when you had your Talking Lead mobile and IC Training was a sponsor. I'm pretty sure that's where you came and trained with me, wasn't it?
Several places. I mean, that could have been.
I think that was the first one, though. I feel like that's where you had the black truck and I had one of the PDN tour trucks.
Could have been.
But at any rate, yeah, Knoxville, it's a cool spot. It's a great place in the country. And I was kind of surprised that downtown had as much. It closed early, but it did have a few, cool spots to go to. I thought that I agree with you. I think for a first time event, Goals did well for sure. It's a hard time in the summer to try to do an event. They had competition with move-in weekend for the college, I think. And weather didn't help on one of the days. It poured rain and made it hard for locals, I think, to want to get on the highway and go downtown. But overall, I thought it did really well.
Yeah, I did too. As far as, handling the capacity, if they didn't have those things going on simultaneously, I think it would have been just, the hotels and the parking and everything would have been fine, that's the biggest complaint that I heard from people was.
And, I kind of get that, I guess, but at the same time, that it was way easier than like a lot of cities I can think of. Right. So, and especially if you took advantage of their discounted rate, because their discounted rate held up until like the Thursday of the event. Normally a discounted rate at like a hotel room with those kinds of things closes like 3 months before the event. But that one, they held a 50% discount at some really nice hotels downtown until just a couple of days before the event. So I think, people are always going to find an excuse not to like something. I was very pleasantly surprised going into a first time event that I probably would not have wanted to go to and not have signed up for if it wasn't just 2 hours from the factory, as an exhibitor with Avidity Arms. But I was really glad that we did. And I was glad that it was in a convenient location, because I probably wouldn't have, I would have said, I'll wait till next year. And I think a lot of people did. So hopefully they jump in next year.
That was my same reason as why I went. I was like, it's only a couple hours away. And if I don't like it, I can just go back home.
Mike, what do you think? You traveled across the country for it.
I wanted to go, obviously, to hang out with you in the Avidity booth, but I also, part of me wanted to be there because it was the very first show that they were doing, so I felt it was kind of cool to support it. While we were there, I was wondering, how would this do in a city like Nashville, right? Like a bigger place that's maybe a little bit more easier to get in and out of. But then I also heard that some of the membership, like the most condensed areas, like were around Knoxville. So that's why it made sense. So, after hearing that, then it made a lot of sense, but I thought it was a good show. To me, so it's hard I think it's hard to do a show to build it up. And I was pretty impressed with who showed up. Like,
Yeah,
there's some pretty
I-75
decent sized booths.
corridor with I-40 and I-75 going right through. You get Atlanta, you get all the way up to Pittsburgh, you get Charlotte, obviously Nashville. It's not that hard to get down to the rest of the Midwest from 75, and then 40 gets you the East Coast. So
North Carolina, Virginia,
Yeah.
all those. But that's another great reason in having it there is because you get a lot of these rural people that don't have the opportunity to go to Vegas or Dallas or Nashville, and it gives them the opportunity. It's like, oh, you're having it right here. It's only a couple of hours. I could make that drive, and you're going to get a lot more of the membership that wouldn't normally be able to the expenses and everything that's with going to these bigger cities. So
one of the things that I think really helped them for the first year is that NRA, which this is a very NRA-like show to me. It's a show that it's on a gun rights organization is running it. It's open to the public. You're not selling firearms like a gun show, but you can sell some of the other stuff, holsters or T-shirts or whatever across the counter. So it's not like a trade show like SHOT Show is. It's an open to the public show. And the fact that NRA was in Dallas also then opens it up to all different people. Because having gone to both shows, I didn't meet a lot of people from, North Carolina and Kentucky at the NRA show, even though there are plenty of NRA members from those places. And I didn't see a lot of people from Dallas or Oklahoma or Arkansas up here at this show in Knoxville. I think they're going to have more of a challenge with that part of it because Atlanta is the NRA meeting next year. So I think there will be a lot of people who are like, oh, I just went to the NRA show. There's probably not going to be anything new there. So I'm hoping that they do some things to differentiate themselves from whatever the NRA show is going to be, which is pretty well established, for some number of decades. So I hope they're doing something. I hope they're factoring that in for next year as far as foot traffic goes.
Yeah. Well, they did the range day. It wasn't open to the public this time, but they did do a range day prior to it. So that's kind of setting it apart right there from the NRA.
Yeah. From an industry standpoint, I thought it was run very much like like TriggerCon. Honestly, I think that for industry insiders, if I were going to tell somebody who was thinking about exhibiting there, I think they really tried to copy the TriggerCon model. And with TriggerCon being out in Kansas, that makes it, a good complement to have it out here on the East Coast. So I wouldn't, as an exhibitor, I wouldn't compare it to NRA. I would compare it to TriggerCon and say, you got the range day for media, you've got the exclusive media time with the exhibitors, and then you've got the open to the public, kind of more NRA-esque exhibit hall. But the other aspects of the event are much more like a TriggerCon than NRA.
I haven't been to a TriggerCon. That's coming up though, isn't it, this year?
Yeah, coming up 3 weeks. Yeah, and we'll be out there. That'll be we weren't going to do that one. I kind of wanted to, and we're just kind of balancing, obviously budget, slow year. The industry is not super hot right now, but I think it's going to be worth it. So I met with some of their representatives at the Gold Show actually, and they said, look, we get it. Like it's on the line, but if we can entice you, come on out. And the range day there is also attractive. I didn't do the range day at Goals, but we are going to do the range day out at TriggerCon. So in fact, we're going to do a range day and we're going to do 30 Super Carry theme. So I see your 30 Superfly there. So we'll actually have PD10s and 30 Super Carry ammo for people to try out.
Nice. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute, but I chased a squirrel when I got into the goals there, but that's where I ran into you guys, and you were giving me some updates, Mike, on what's been going on with Walk the Talk America. And I was like, well, we really need to get the listeners updated because you guys are really progressing now, and you're getting into some new territory with the organization, and talk about the new steps that you guys are taking to expand and improve upon this message that you're trying to get out there about the mental health issue in the firearms.
Yeah, well, so the interesting thing about Walk Talk America is I think if you asked every single member or every single board member, like, what's the most important thing Walk Talk America does, everyone might have a different answer, right? Whether that's providing free anonymous mental health screenings in the boxes of firearms, all the way up to the advocacy work we do. But for me, I feel like every year we have to do something new. I mean, everyone always says, what's new with Walk Talk America, right? And I'm thinking, like, it would be fair to answer, hey, like, we have enough on our plate, but we do keep expanding. We do keep coming up with new concepts, and we listen to demand, right? So one thing that I want to bring up to the listeners that I want them to know exists is and Rob was very instrumental in this. We had some fights about it and the way we wanted to handle it, but I think I think Rob was right at the end. there's a demand, and many states are compelling firearms instructors to add an hour of mental health and suicide prevention into their curriculum. Now, then those instructors would turn back around to the states and say, we have no problem doing that, but what do you want? Of course, the states acted like birds who wanted to fly south, but didn't know why. They were like, I don't know, we just want you to do it. So we had a lot of instructors coming to us saying, hey, like, what do you guys have that I can use in my classes for my students that would tackle this? And we came up with this hour-long video. We broke it up into chapters. And this is, we were talking about this before the show. One of the things that I love about this, and this is why I love the firearms industry, is that we have more instructors that are outside of those states that are actually using this. We get plenty of them that say, hey, I use your video, that are not compelled to do it by the state, that just want to do it because it's the right thing to do. And I want to kick it over to Rob, because Rob, you made a great point as we were talking about this when you came on, when Marty and I were talking about this whole thing is, one
of the things that for those of you who maybe haven't heard this before, the first time you're hearing about WTTA, is one of the first, I think, really important things that we did, other than try to, get the conversation going or make it okay to talk about mental health, which was the first big initiative, was just an awareness. It's okay to talk about it, and we should be talking about it campaign. Within the first year, we launched a cultural competency course, and that cultural competency course was aimed at mental health professionals. And it was to educate mental health professionals about the gun community, about what responsible gun ownership was, and make sure that they knew when someone came in and said, hey, I'm feeling kind of depressed, if they, on their list of questions, one of them is, well, do you have firearms in the house? Right. And it's like, well, if you're depressed and you have firearms in the house and you're having suicidal thoughts, we need to say, get rid of the guns, kind of thing. And it's like, but you don't have to say that. There's better things to say. And there's other really important things to ask, and not just, do you have guns in the house? And educating them about what responsible gun ownership is. And part of that's, who is the gun community? Well, the gun community is over 100 million people. It's a very diverse community, but there are a few kind of behavioral traits we can point at, especially people who own guns for defense, which is the primary reason for owning guns. And if you're going to start talking about separating yourself from guns, now you're leaving them potentially thinking about being vulnerable, and they're going to say no, and they're going to run away from mental health care. So one of the talking points is the gun community really doesn't like being told what to do. Honestly, like, at the end of the day, they're very libertarian. They want to be able to call their own shots. And the whole premise of why I carry this gun, like, if you get behavioral about it, there may be a situation that I'm not expecting out there. I want to be able to take control back from that chaos, that person who's trying to hurt me or my family or somebody else I care about. And this gun might be necessary for me to take control back. So controlling my space, being in control of myself, decisions I make, all that's really important. And the gun community has a tendency to, I call it the F off effect. If you could educate a room full of parents that own guns about quick access safes and responsible ownership, and educating and talking to kids about guns, and preventing unauthorized access, like Mike was talking about before, and probably get like 99% head nods and, yeah, that makes sense, best practices. I've been looking at one of those safes, and you would change minds, educate people, and if they weren't preventing their kids from getting access to their guns before that class, you could get them to buy in. But as soon as you put a law on it and you say government says you have to lock your guns up if you have kids in the house, we're going to say F off as a community, right? And we're going to rebel against that. And there's a tendency from what I think is a large and noisy part of the community to purposefully take pictures of them, like, here's my gun, let the government tell me what to do with it. And it's just like, hanging over the mantle or whatever. And maybe that's a collectible, or maybe that's the actual home defense AR. And there is a 9-year-old who has friends over that we don't need getting access to a loaded gun without supervision. And that's a problem. So that F off effect is created when legislators come in like, oh, we'll just change their behavior by legislating it. That doesn't work. Like, legislation doesn't stop murders. Legislation creates a mechanism by which we're going to punish murderers. And I think with responsibility and safety and best practices, we really need to be talking education, not legislation, like, at all.
And I agree with that. And another point that maybe with this resistance, when something like this is proposed, is you think it's that mentality of, if you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile kind of mentality also.
Sure.
It's like, even though we know that this is good and, it could, really help, the fact that they're mandating it again, if we give them an inch, they're going to take a mile.
Yeah. If they make me lock the guns up at home, next thing it'll be like, places in Europe where you have to keep your guns at the gun club. Like, I mean, that's a big jump. but I understand how the mind gets there when you're already focused on pushing back and resisting, because it's an unjust infringement, right? And like I was saying earlier, when it comes to parental responsibility, the way I dealt with guns in the home with my older daughter, who's going to be 29 next month, is very different from the way I deal with my 9-year-old and the way I deal with guns in the house and my 9-year-old. And that's really me maturing, as well as the technology maturing and the community maturing, and just kind of all around, and me understanding the difference between the gun, leaned up behind the door with a magazine in it and a round in the chamber versus the gun inside of a quick access safe, and me understanding intellectually that I'm not only am I just as safe with the gun in the quick access safe as far as repelling invaders, also my family is much safer. The friends that come over, my friends that come over and have a couple drinks and might wander into the wrong room and then be curious about it and uneducated in how to use guns and might hurt themselves. Like, everybody's better off with the gun in a quick access safe if that's my home defense gun. But I didn't really know or accept that in the 90s, right? And now I do. So the way we have evolved as a community, I think my personal experience as a parent that owns guns has also evolved, and I don't think I'm alone in that when I talk to a lot of people.
Evolving as a community, I like that you said that, because this is the crazy part about what we're doing, Marty, is like we are pioneering certain things that have never been done before. Like, Walk the Talk America is being copied by a lot of outside organizations. The things that we do, we're being studied, right? The things we bring to the table. And give you an example is this instructor video. It was the first of its kind. We came out with it last year. I already know 2 organizations that are taking this. They're not taking this verbatim, but they're coming out with their own. These are mental health organizations that are doing this. I want people to understand that this originated from us. Like, it came from the gun community first. It's important to me.
That's a huge conversation that we had that one night. You were telling me that, in the beginning, these people were welcoming you in, and you were just so surprised that they were welcoming you in, and you're sharing all this information with them. And it turned out that they were just using you for your data so that they could turn around and use it for their own purposes.
Well, they can make money off of it too. Out
completely is what they were doing.
Yeah.
So how has that changed? I guess maybe your willingness or maybe your work structure when you approach the mental health profession with these ideas.
It's just me bitching. It'll never really change.
Yeah. I think that's important, right? Like, you still have to do what's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to do what's right. And I think the best we can do is make a lot of noise about it. I've always been that way with like patent pending or trademarks and stuff. It's like, you have to have the money, right, to defend that. So with something like the magazine well on our rifles, people are like, oh, are you going to patent that? It's like, well, no, because the company can't afford to defend a patent infringement. I'd rather just get it out there and talk about it a lot and put a bunch of pictures out and make sure everybody sees it. And then if Daniel Defense is doing the same thing on their magwells or Colt is doing the same thing on their magwells next year, enough people will know, like, oh, that was Pincus's idea. That was Avidity did that first. That's cool.
Go back to a video 3 years ago, and these guys just started doing it. It's like, well,
yeah, I mean, like, like the appendix video. I was actually just looking at a video about. I had in an alumni group I'm in for my college. It's one for law enforcement professionals only from the college. And one guy was saying, well, my kid just is old enough now that she's been asking questions about my duty belt and the gun. And what do you guys say to your kids? And I just linked a bunch of resources and where I've addressed it. One of them was the Talking Lead video we did on the range with Christina years ago. And I put that in the link in it, but I'm just now thinking we did that one about how to present safely from the appendix carry position. That was like groundbreaking stuff back in whenever we did it, 2012 or 13. And now everybody teaches that. But that was a time when people were saying, oh, you can't even come to my class carrying appendix because it's inherently dangerous. The 3 most popular. And, there's a lot of stuff carrying, medical gear on the range, making sure that was talked about at every class, not just the medical classes. That was something we were doing. And I see a lot of that with Walk Talk America, what Mike's doing, what Jake's doing. I've been a part of it too. In some cases, it really is groundbreaking. And that's enough, right? I think for the organization and for me to if other people are copying it, great. Because that really is going to make Earth better. It's always like the bottom line is the money will show up. but let's make Earth better, and we'll figure out how to monetize it later.
Yeah, part of the problem, Marty, was that I sat there and for the first like 3 years, I was like, if anybody could steal this stuff and do it better than me, please do, because saving life isn't proprietary. It was just then when I saw people stealing the ideas and not giving the credit to the gun industry, or like, I started to look at it. I'm like, God, it stings. It's a little bit annoying. You know what I mean? Like I said, it is what it is. I mean, Cause of Pause gets ripped off all the time, Rob. It's not like that was, I mean, people have been doing that sort of thing for a long time, but it's just like, I feel like we don't get a lot of credit. And when I say we, I'm not talking about just WTTA. I'm just talking about the firearms industry, right? Like we're always the villain in the movie. We're this, that. We're coming up with these things and people are saying, wow, that's a really good idea. I never really thought about that. And to me, it's just like, I think people need to understand that we do have something to bring to the table as the firearms community. And we do have a homegrown organization that you could be very proud of, to where you could literally be like, yeah, we were the first ones to do that.
But it is very
done
important. Yeah, but it is very important that people understand that these ideas that these mental health professionals and institutes are taking from your organization have come from the firearms industry, and that the firearms industry was blazing the trail for this, instead of them trying to turn it around and say, we're behind, we're not thinking about this, we're not concerned about this, when in fact, and let's get back to this video, this firearms instructors mental health resource video here. You said that instructors were coming to you because states were making them make it part of their curriculum. How do they make them make it part of their curriculum, especially like a place like California, where do they even have good, because they don't have permits there?
Since the Bruin decision, all of Hawaii, California, well, since McDonald really, but then Bruin made it, you couldn't get away from it, right? So New Jersey has started issuing permits, Hawaii started issuing permits. California really started after McDonald, but it broke open even into the counties like San Francisco. Like Chris Chang made a big deal about being able to finally get his permit, I think, after Bruin. There were a lot of people who couldn't because of the counties they were in. And it wasn't a statewide mandate, but there were other counties like the Central Valley in California where you could. So the state comes in, and just like they say, you have to take, for a long time, the NRA basic pistol course was the standard default CCW course, which made no sense because there was nothing about concealed carry tactics or even defensive firearms use in that course, but it was the default permit course around the country through the 90s and into the 2000s. Well, some states like Texas famously has the most restrictive license to carry LTC program, with exactly what has to be taught and exactly how much time has to be spent on it and all that stuff. And of course, they're constitutional carry now, permitless carry, but that program was very onerous and very specifically documented about how it had to be conducted. Well, now Colorado, California, Mike, the list. There's some other states that have now said, okay, here's the new update to what you have to teach or how much time you have to spend. And you now also have to include suicide prevention or mental health, depending on how it's worded, information. And one of our concerns was, well, look, just because you're a firearms instructor doesn't mean you have any knowledge of what to say in that area. So let's provide a valuable resource. And again, you get the F off factor where if it's coming from WTTA, it can be trusted and it should be trusted. But if it's coming from some outside organization, then the instructors are going to push back against it, even if it is verbatim a copy of what we're doing. And those other organizations don't get it. They don't understand how much more powerful it would be to just share what we're doing, or at least give us credit, or try to collaborate with us if they wanted to do, higher production value or something. It's actually legislated that you need to include this information now in Mike, what are the other states? Do you know off the top of your head? New York?
Maryland, New York, New Jersey. It's a lot of the ones that probably people would guess, they're not a shock, but it's like, to me, once again, when I see
being forced to allow the permits now, they're stacking additional conditions on top of that to make it, again, more difficult or less desirable maybe for people to want to go and get that.
And for the instructors, like the law, the most recent change in Colorado has made it much harder for an instructor to even really know what to do because of some involvement from the county and from CBI. But at the same time, I was very involved in trying to stop the law from going through. We, along with Guns for Everyone, with Edgar Antione and some other people in Colorado, we were very successful, I think, in changing some of the most onerous and restrictive parts of it. But in other ways, they made some changes to take away direction. So now you've got instructors that aren't even sure how to go about teaching the classes. And of course, that means classes aren't getting taught, and it becomes de facto gun control. Because you're infringing on people's rights, because you created a bureaucracy where it's impossible for an instructor to reliably know they can teach the course without having to worry about getting arrested.
Acro bags embrace the art of blending in with a low-vis, everyday carry bag featuring a dedicated, discreet firearm storage system. Inspired to keep this functional as a great everyday commuter bag, daily essentials are organized and secure while on the go, offering a vast array of organizational options in a very comfortable platform. Designed to meet the needs of modern commuters and travelers seeking both functionality and security, the Acro 10-liter sling bag offers an array of organizational options in a comfortable platform. Whether you're a daily commuter, law enforcement professional, or a weekend warrior, this sling bag caters to your lifestyle with utmost precision. The dedicated, discreet concealed firearm compartment is ambidextrous with quick access.
Mission First Tactical is the official tactical accessories provider for the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Use the code LEADHEAD for an exclusive 20% discount on all orders.
Yeah. So they've put this new requirement in with the mental health. What are they requiring these instructors to teach or disseminate? Because how can they teach this if they're not a mental health professional?
That's where we came in. That's why we were like, look, we got this. We covered so many bases in this video. And like I said, there was a lot of internal arguments about how we were going to present this information, right? And like Rob was like, we just got to get it out there, right? Like, get it out there. And I'm glad we
talking. Can I play it?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll mute it while you're talking, but.
And it's we did it in chapters, right? Because the what I believe, and I think Rob, I'm speaking for you too, is that all it takes. Oh my God, who's that handsome guy? No, all it takes is for one of our instructors that's interested in this to play it twice, right? And then you could start being like, okay, I can build off this. I can even make it better, right? So Rob has a section, Kevin Dixie has a section, Jake Wiskerson has a section. I have an intro and an outro, and I think it's just all encompassing. It covers every base. There is not one person that works for the state that would probably come in here and say, no, this video isn't great, right? Like that's what I truly believe. And I'm very proud of that. Like I said, I'm very proud that it's us doing that, that we came through. And, if AFSP is going to copy it and do their own and make $1 million off theirs from the state getting grants, good for them. But I mean, hey, they had to watch it and figure it out, because I'm sure they wouldn't have come to these conclusions on their own, like the stuff that we cover. So
this is something that you're offering free of charge to these instructors. You're not making a dime off this. It's something that you put together through your own time and resources through the organization. And then you're offering it free, where these other companies or organizations are copying and getting grants. That was part of the big conversation that we had, is the why they're doing this is because these organizations get government grants, and you're providing the fuel for them to get these grants. A lot
of those larger nonprofits, like any large nonprofit, how much is it going to cost for you to do this video? Well, it cost us like $49, right? Like, it was just our time and effort and just do it, right? Like, there's no real, at the end of the day, I mean, one of those scenes, I was standing right over here in front of these quick access safes talking about, separating yourself from immediate access to guns. And in the other one, I was talking about mental health, and I was in my office in Colorado at the time, and we just did it, right? It took time, but that's it. These guys are going to come in and say, well, we're going to have to hire a production crew, and we're going to have to rent a studio, and we're going to have to buy quick access safes because we don't actually own any of them because we're not gun owners. So all of a sudden it's they have $150,000 they need for their video that they're going to put out. And by the way, the $150,000 video, they also have salaried employees that are going to get paid, and the subcontractors at the production company. And all these people are making money off of it, because guess what? At the end of the day, it takes you 4 hours to make that video, or 8 maybe, right? But it's not about the money. Again, Make Earth Better. These other entities that make it about the money almost make it harder to do the work, in an altruistic way. But
So talk about what this video encompasses. What are these states requiring firearms instructors to talk about with the mental health? What points do they have to hit? Are they required to hit?
I don't think requirements have been really defined. That was some of the frustration that some of the instructors were having, because they're just like, what do you want us to say? And they were like, hey, we just want you to tackle these subjects. So we've been doing this for 6 years, right? And with everybody that's involved in this, we feel like we were able to come up with a bunch of subjects that needed to be touched upon, right? Whether that's preventing unauthorized access, knowing your biases,
knowing when to separate yourself from guns, from your own immediate access, how to help somebody else. Like the idea that, you may not be able to legally take this gun from me. Like if I'm in New Jersey, I can't go to my brother's house and take the gun, right? But I can make sure it's clear, right? And then disassemble it, and I can take the slide, and this has to stay. It's a serial numbered part. It has to stay, but I can take this, and now he doesn't have immediate access to guns while he's drunk or angry or whatever. Not that my brother would ever get drunk or angry, but just hypothetical brother, right? So that kind of stuff, just the common sense stuff that a room full of new gun owners might not get. They might get bogged down with I can't take a gun in a private transfer in my state. So how can I help my neighbor? How can I distance myself from guns? Well, you can take a key component, right? I mean, you could just take the barrel and just say, hey, take this and put the rest of it in your top drawer. And now you don't have to worry about your son who's suicidal in the house, like watching him like a bird dog every minute because you have guns in the house. Right? Or buying a new safe tonight. You can just take this and give this to your neighbor, coworker, mail it to yourself, whatever, and you're fine. So it's that kind of stuff. I think it's practical advice from gun owners to gun owners. And then obviously Jake, as a mental health professional, Kevin tackles some really important stuff about understanding kind of what can trigger you, or what can escalate into a negative outcome really fast. If you're not already thinking about it like ahead of time. So there's a lot of, it's a wide spectrum of information in there.
Yeah, and the best part about it is there's no extra cost passed on to any of the students, because instructors had to pay for this, and that was a great point Rob made, is like, why do you want to do that to somebody? You keep tacking on fees or this and this and that. Hey, we put it out there for free. It's a resource. You could use it. You could break it up in chapters. I think that's one of the coolest things about it, and figure out what else you want to incorporate as an instructor. And the feedback we've gotten so far has been excellent. We have gotten zero negative feedback. Most instructors that I have talked to have said they really enjoy it.
And we have gotten some donations, right? Which is obviously always we got to put that hand out there and say, by the way, if you want more resources like this, that $49 is what's, maintaining the website and charging the batteries on that camera and all that stuff. So we do need, for people who find value in it or any of this stuff, or just right now, if it's like, hey, that sounds like a good idea, head over to WTTA.org and hit that donation button. That's easy. And we hope that those instructors are encouraging their students to do that and sharing that part of the news with people, that this organization is doing it. But at the end of the day, like I said, make Earth better, money will show up,
Are you guys traveling to ranges and putting on seminars at gun ranges across the country? You started doing that yet? I know at one point we were talking about it.
I'm actually traveling more. I think I get more attention from I would say the mental health organizations out there. I just got back from the Stop the Stigma conference in man, this is something I want to tell your listeners, because I feel like as the firearms industry, the 2A community, we feel beat up sometimes, right? Like, once again, we always feel like we're the villain and no one gives us a shot. I went out and I spoke at the Stop the Stigma conference, co-presented with Mental Health America, on the stigma that gun owners face when it comes to their mental health, and didn't get pushback at all. Actually, all positive, room full of a couple hundred people, killed the presentation, had so many great meetings. Cut to a month later, I get contacted from somebody who is from Hollywood. And they said, hey, I saw you speak at the Stop the Stigma conference, and I represent a group of writers in Hollywood that write for movies and television. And we want to start incorporating responsible gun ownership and things of that sort, like, into our scripts, because a lot of these writers don't know how to do that, right? Because the only way that they can incorporate guns is the ways that we've always known, the action sequences, maybe some of the ways that we see them in negative lights, other ways too, right? Like, obviously we love movies where people shoot each other up. That's what this country's been built on. But this is what's awesome. They're coming to us. They're coming to the gun community for that. I've had 2 meetings, one with prop masters and then one with this guy who represents the writers. And that happened because I went and spoke at a convention that wasn't conventional for the firearms industry, right? I went to a mental health convention. And I think we're seeing this acceptance from Walk the Talk America. And that's a play that we never even thought of. Like, I did not think that there was going to be this crossover appeal about what we did when I started this organization.
Now, spoiler alert, 2 years from now, when like some Angelina Jolie, whatever movie comes out and she goes to get a gun to defend herself and she has to go into a gun vault and pop open a quick access safe. No, what's going to happen is you're going to pick the producer and writer as the jackwagon of the week. Look, they're telling people they have to keep their gun. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm talking lead. But that's what's going to happen. So a scene like that is going to be turned into, oh, look, Hollywood's giving us anti-gun propaganda that you have to lock your guns up. And that's the problem with our community, is that will be the reaction that some people will have. And it'll be because we aren't talking about this enough. Right. And that's why I'm glad that Mike's talking about that ahead of time. And maybe it'll never happen, but when and if it happens, I think it will. It'll be influential. We may not even know who Mike is influencing with that kind of stuff. But when it shows up, we can't always have the knee-jerk reaction of, oh, I bet the Brady campaign or Mom's Demand Action made them do that. No, they're just doing the right thing. And it is the right thing.
Yeah. And one thing I want to throw in there is the very first conversation I had. They had me on the guy who handles a lot of the armors, and I guess like gun safety, gun responsibility has been a huge issue since the Alec Baldwin situation. And the person who runs that department, super pro gun. And he was so excited to hear that there was an organization like Walk the Talk America, because I feel like he walks in that other world as the person that walks in our world normally. So he was just so happy that, I was on that.
Marty, that's what a lot of people are doing to us is we're getting more positive feedback from outside of the gun community. So when you say, are we going to ranges aren't inviting us to come in and talk about the importance of quick access safe, even though it's the right thing to do and it would help them sell safes.
Yeah.
But, we offered, Mike and I did a little like skit.
Certainly the quick access safes, but the other aspect of this video that you guys have put together with, if you've got someone who is experiencing mental, here's some things you could do to safeguard their house for them.
Absolutely.
Without breaking laws. I mean, that's
right.
And
we did a video on trauma mitigation. I think trauma mitigation is in the instructor video too, but we did a little skit and a video for range owners that I've had a bunch of range owners and range managers take advantage of, and retail operations as well, where we're telling them, like, look, if you're in the gun community and you're standing at that counter and you sell the gun across the counter and the dude buying the gun has a kid with him and they leave and you find out 2 weeks later that kid had some negligent accident or there was some kind of murder suicide in that house or whatever, and that's going to affect you. That's going to traumatize you, right? It's not your fault. But if you also had heard our video, thought about that ahead of time, if we were teaching people in the gun industry that, and then when that guy's standing there with the kid, you say, are you securing your guns at home, or do you have a quick access safe, or you force that conversation, or you have the WTTA suicide prevention thing sitting right there at the point of purchase. Now, when that happens, because we're not going to prevent all these tragedies, but if that tragedy happens, you're now a little bit insulated from that mental and emotional impact, because you asked the question, you tried to sell that guy a safe, you asked how he was doing, that the mental health and suicide prevention information is there. And I think that's why we see these instructors using that course when they don't have to. The government's not saying they have to, they just believe it's the right thing to do. And they're going to insulate themselves from that potential trauma. Right out here is a big factory floor, and we have 40 employees here. The month before we started shipping PD-10s, we had everybody get together in a big meeting, and the owner of the manufacturing facility is our partner in Avidity Arms. And we had a meeting and we kind of cheerleaded a little bit about the gun's going to go out and this and that. And Rob's taking the gun, the SHOT Show. But one of the parts of that meeting was, hey, and by the way, we have WTTA information all over the place around here. We want you guys to know we're not going into this blind, and we don't want you to go into it blind either. And this is going to be an uncomfortable part of the conversation. But one of these guns, you know, if we're successful as a business and we sell hundreds of thousands of these over the next decade or whatever, we're going to see a crime scene photo. We're going to hear about a tragedy. There's going to be something that happens. It's going to make you feel about it. You're going to get, maybe right now you're getting a weird feeling in your stomach. Well, now imagine when it happens, because if we are successful, there's just a math game that says we can't prevent all the tragedies from happening. And that's why when you open up our box, it says, you know, we have the WTTA information, the Pledge of Responsible Ownership information. We have rights come with responsibilities in the foam, right, when you pick the gun up. But we're not going to prevent them all. But it's important that you talk about that ahead of time so that when it happens, I don't have 35 out of 40 people in this building saying, oh my God, I never knew I was going to be exposed to this. And that makes it even harder on our community. Right. And that's one of the things that's in the video. It's one of the things we talk about, this trauma mitigation. If you're carrying the gun around, you need to be prepared for not only if things go wrong, but also if things go quote unquote right. If you have to kill somebody to defend yourself or your family, like, have you insulated yourself mentally and emotionally from that? You might survive the physical fight. You still have an emotional fight, a mental health fight afterwards. And these things are what we're talking about, because we think that's what's important in a video for first time concealed carry permittees going through a class, without needing the government to tell us, put this bullet point in there.
Talk about, I mean, you were just talking about the things that you include with your firearms. Talk about the resources that you have available for manufacturers to include with their guns, that or a range, or a gun shop could put in with each sale of their firearm, the resources that you guys have. Because I know you've got some pre-made brochures and pamphlets and things like that.
We got inserts. We got companies like Veracity.
What do you need?
Yeah.
We got it right here.
Yeah, we got everything you need, bro. No, but so like that's our standard mental health, I guess you'd say, flyer, right? That you can get to. It leads to the free and anonymous mental health screenings on the back. You could use that for any of the local clinicians. So, for example, in Reno, right, Jake Wiskershin has Zephyr Wellness. Zephyr Wellness is plastered on the back of those cards. So every gun shop that he works with, he's giving them a place where they know that they can send their customers, and their customers aren't going to be sent to somebody who's anti-gun, somebody who's culturally competent in firearms, and welcomes the 2A community into their clinic. We have companies like Arms Corps that puts the free and anonymous mental health screenings on the side of the box, which I think is absolutely brilliant because obviously it's free and anonymous for your customers. You want your customers to be healthy, but let's just say Arms Corps was pulled into a frivolous lawsuit or some kind of BS lawsuit that hey, you marketed the wrong way to your customers, and now we find you liable because somebody used Arms Corps ammo in a mass shooting. At least Arms Corps could say, no, we do everything in our power to get our consumer mental health resources and help so they don't do something tragic, right? It's plausible deniability that. Well,
you have a great point there. Another, campaign point that the liberals are pulling is, trying to make manufacturers, remove that shield of liability, and make them liable for every murder that's ever happened. So,
yeah, I mean,
this is something that they can do.
Yeah, I can go off on my placard rant whenever you want to push the button.
Okay. We'll do that next, but keep talking about the resources that you guys are providing.
No, so it's free and anonymous mental health screenings, so everybody calls us a suicide prevention organization, and to some extent we are, but I like to think of us as more than that. I don't want to catch you when you're suicidal. I want gun owners to be walking around this planet healthy. My belief system is that you're going to catch people at stage 1, not stage 4. So what we try to do is give people tools and resources that they can use that can, keep them where they're at when they're mentally healthy, not in crisis. I think we need to get back to having healthy members of society and giving them ways to cope with whatever it is that's going on in the world or whatever bugs them. So for us, it's really planting the seed that gun owners know that guns and mental health are not mutually exclusive, that they go together, and that you need to stay on top of it. Like we just recently at Walk Talk America released our I would call it our better mental health plan, where we ask a series of questions to gun owners to think about the future, right? I bought this gun. I'm happy. Everything's good in my life now, but maybe in 6 months, it's not. Maybe in 10 years, it's not, but it doesn't hurt to have a plan for that time when it comes up. That's what being prepared is. That's what Rob teaches, right? For Christ's sakes, right? Like Rob teaches gun owners to be prepared for anything, right? You stay vigilant. You're always prepared. So why can't you have a mental health plan and a suicide prevention plan for if those times come, for whether a family member's in the house or it's you? So what we like to encourage is gun owners to be like, you could be part of this conversation. Do not let anybody else outside of the 2A community tell you that you're not on top of it, or that guns and mental health are mutually exclusive and they don't go together, because they do. They're tied together, whether we like it or not. Suicide, today's tragedy, is horrible. And you're going to see media for the next week hammer this home. But I still want to bring this back to suicide prevention as the most important thing. That is the number one issue when it comes to firearms. That is the intersection of guns and mental health, is suicide. And that's what we got to remember during these horrific times, is that we have a mass shooting every day if you add up everybody that takes their life with a firearm, right? You're looking at CDC numbers. The CDC numbers now have us at 74 suicides by firearm per day. That's a massive mass shooting. That's bigger than the biggest mass shooting, which happened
almost every year for the last 12 years. It's been over 60% of firearms deaths. Sometimes it's over 70% of firearms involved deaths inside of our country are suicide. So it's like, it's not magazine restrictions. It's not assault weapon bans. It's not getting rid of private transfers, quote unquote, universal background checks. It's 100% mental health. And, Mike said that like mental health and guns are connected, whether we want them to be or not. Mental health and motorcycle riding is connected. Mental health and like songwriting is connected. Like your mental health, I don't care what your thing is, like your mental health is incredibly important. And I've said for a long time, a little bit like, I guess a little flippantly, like I'm not a suicide prevention guy. Like I'm a pro-gun, avoid negative outcomes with guns, get gun rights, defend yourself with a gun, be prepared kind of guy. So I don't want gun owners taking their lives. But honestly, like if you're jumping in front of a train, I'm not going to run around and be mad if they want to put higher fences all along every single train track all over the world. Like that's not going to make me mad. Like, okay, it's probably going to slow me down at some train track crossings in the rural areas, but we'll figure it out, right? That's not my action. That's not my activism. So people talk about like, responsible end of life choices. Should be able to choose suicide? Like, hey, the philosophy on that, like that's not what this is about. However, the reason that suicide prevention is the number one thing we're talking about is because that is by far the number one thing that affects negatively firearms and individuals. And most of those individuals are gun owners. They're lifelong gun owners. They're professionals who are armed, right? Who've been armed for a decade or more in a community that is supposed to be able to watch out for mental health problems, right? Like the law enforcement community or the military. And if we aren't really super, obviously way more proactive than we need to be than we are currently, because for the last decade, we've said, oh, we need to be more aware of this. And we've talked about it, and everybody gets the 22 a day, and with the numbers change all the time, and whatever, we get all the talking points, but what we're not doing is really having an incredibly significant impact. And I fear that most of it is because the conversation's always around legislation. It's always around red flag laws, and it's always around weaponizing mental health. And it's not around just proactively being mentally healthier as humans and trying to encourage that in our families, in our communities, in our workplaces. That's what we need to be focused on, and that will have that trickle down effect inside of the gun community. But like we keep coming back to, it's frustrating that we get more engagement and excitement from people outside of the gun community saying, "Oh, look, there's gun people doing positive things," than we do inside the gun community saying, "Oh, that's easy. We should all be doing what you're doing."
Or we're doing it. Kind of, you're preaching to the choir. Kind of,
yeah.
Attitude. You get that a lot within the industry itself. And it's surprising to me that, as you guys have gotten into this, 18, what is it?
5 years.
6. Yeah.
6 years. 6 years. 6 years. Yeah.
6 years now. And the people that are embracing you more are outside of the firearms community. You're getting embraced more by them.
Mike, I say that. Is that, do you feel that's true? I feel like that's true.
I feel like it's true, and I feel so one of the positives of that, though, or why that happens, the expectation level of the gun community has been next to nothing when it comes to providing solutions. So I feel like what happens is when I go speak at these events, I feel like I have an ace up my sleeve that I could play when I'm talking about like what Ruger and what Arms Corps and what all these organizations are doing, or what we're doing as WTTA. And then what happens is people in that crowd usually go, "Oh my God, like I've never even heard this," right? Because the only thing that they've heard before is the talking points, right? All the rhetoric, all the stuff. I mean, you have anti-gun organizations that use, that say they're not anti-gun, and they use these certain talking points to make it sound like they're doing more than we do.
Gun safety for a long time. Now, they're starting to follow us down the path of responsible gun ownership, which that's what we want them. We just don't want responsible gun ownership to be code word for gun control. Like gun safety organization has become code word for gun control. Yeah. And that's where you have to be really loud and I think very proactive about protecting, not like a trademark or a patent again, but just we were here first talking about responsible gun ownership, because otherwise, it's only a matter of time before the internet decides, the gun owning community on the internet decides that responsible gun ownership is code word for gun control, which it shouldn't be. We should own that. We should own that phrase. We should own that concept. We have been owning it because there's 400 million guns out there and very few tragedies, right? Because there's 100 million gun owners out there and relatively few deaths when we compare it to a lot of other things that are dangerous out there. Injury rates and death rates. But at the same time, because we don't celebrate it, because we fear they're going to weaponize it, or they're going to use it against this, or they're going to take Rob Pincus and quote him saying that responsible gun owners prevent unauthorized access and use that to promote a safe storage law. Like, we're so afraid of that in our community that we don't own the space, and then we lose ground.
Yeah, but part of that, Rob, I think some of the issue gun owners have interacting with non-gun owners, I'd say gun neutral or maybe anti-gun people, is that we've never really had our own solutions, right? And that's why I think it's important for people to understand that when you're familiar with what we do and the solutions we provide, then you have a captive audience. So like when I spoke at the Aspen Institute of Health and I got warned by 12 people coming off the plane how anti-gun this crowd is and that I was going to get eaten alive, I was able to shit all over the red flag laws on stage and literally have no pushback while all the other panelists did. Why? Because I was able to come up there and talk about all the solutions that the gun industry is coming up with to combat suicide prevention, or, to combat suicide, not suicide prevention, and to combat like inner city violence, like all these things that, people want addressed. And then what happened is I was able to make people see their blind spots. So when I told the crowd, I come from a world where red flag laws potentially could get people killed because people won't go get help because they're afraid to lose their Second Amendment right. It made the crowd think. So then I'm walking around the Aspen Institute of Health the next 2 days, just going to all the little events that were happening because I had nothing else to do, because I'd already talked, on Wednesday and I was leaving Friday night. And I was having people come up to me and say, "Hey, dude, I saw you speak the other day at that panel. And I got to tell you something. I'm still not a fan of guns, but you gave me something to think about. I never thought that red flag laws created a barrier to entry for people to get help. I just thought you people wanted to arm everybody. But the way you said it, the way you presented it, the reason why I was able to present it and say it like that is because I already hit them with a bunch of stuff that we do. So now they're like, oh my God, this person is probably better than the every town who's just talking about gun safety. He's actually being proactive.
You're presenting solutions to problems where these other people are just bitching and they have no solutions for their bitch. And you're presenting solutions and showing actual action being taken. So how can they dispute that? They can't.
Yeah. And then I make them see their blind spot, right? I make them see that sometimes your feel-good legislation creates a problem that you didn't think about. Not every scenario that you have for a red flag law is that perfect scenario where it's Mike's waving his firearm around talking about Martians and there's kids in the front yard and he's like, they're going to go, right? Like sometimes that's not, I get where most people's mind goes, but that goes back to what I want to say to people that are listening right now. Remember that most of the crowd that you're going to engage with is gun neutral or gun ignorant. They're not actually anti-gun. They've never seen another side of it, right? Like when I spoke at the San Jose State event, the Moms Demand Action event, when they brought me there, I got a lot of pushback from the gun industry. They said I shouldn't have been there. I shouldn't have done that. Well, the reason why I did that, dum-dums, is because I didn't want them to control the narrative, right? I knew that once I got there, I was going to be able to bring it back to suicide prevention. And I was going to talk about all the cool things the gun industry did to a group of students who most likely were gun neutral, that if I didn't show up to speak at that event, they were only going to hear one side of the story. And I'm standing in front of a sign that says end gun violence, which is the equivalent of saying, who in this crowd doesn't want to see puppies get their throats slit by samurai swords, right? Like nobody on the planet wants gun violence, including gun people.
I think that's it, but that's the thing is, it's when I'm in that room, it's like, you're a gun safety organization, Giffords? Interesting. Do you have any videos on your website or any articles about how to safely store a gun in a home? Or are you just advocating for the government to say you have to lock a gun up? Right? Do you have any what you would consider gun safety advice? Do you talk about, now you're going to talk about responsible ownership, you're for responsible ownership. Have you described that? Can you tell me what that is? Because what I see is a lot of government mandate and you shouldn't have a gun. And that's the problem is you can pull the rug out from under, we're a gun safety organization really easily, but you have to be in the room, and Mike's not afraid to go into that room. And as a community, we have been conditioned for a long time to be told, you can't have a conversation with those people. They won't listen. So don't go into that room. And that's horrible. Advice. It's horrible advice.
I want people to understand something right now. I've spoken with CNN twice, a reporter from CNN and The Guardian. The first time she contacted me, basically she was afraid of me. She thought I was going to have the quick fuse, right? We were supposed to talk for 45 minutes. We talked for 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours. We've talked twice now since then, right? And all been great conversations. All those things that WTTA is doing, they were mind-blowing to her. And she kept saying, I don't understand why you guys aren't like the face of the gun industry. She said that to me, which I take as a compliment, right? Because the way I look at it is there's not a room that I can't walk into. And I don't want to make it like, oh, I got to win this argument, right? Like I don't go into those rooms to argue. I go into those rooms to make people understand. I don't need them to be, I don't need them to be pro-gun or anti-gun. I need them to be pro-understanding.
Yeah, you don't go in there to win, and they go in to win. They want to win an argument.
Well, but a lot of our side wants that too. They only want to go to like friendly media because they don't want to be attacked. They don't want to be challenged. And my whole thing is like, my words have been misrepresented by factors of 100 more often inside the gun community than they have been outside of the gun community. Like I got misrepresented by Huffington Post a bunch of years ago about storing a gun in a kid's room thing. And it turned into a great conversation starter in the broader community about what I actually was saying and why. But inside the gun community, and including what Mike was just talking about, when he went out to San Jose, he was attacked by some of the biggest, YouTube names out there because he was, hanging out with the enemy and being part and like he was legitimizing their conference or whatever. It's like that conference was going to happen. That day was going to happen whether Mike showed up or not. The fact that Mike was there, he was able to affect the narrative. He was able to influence people that weren't going to come to the NRA convention.
The Firebird M50 targets are a new, low-noise version of our popular 50 bio-detonating target. M50 targets are self-contained, pyrotechnic, reactive targets that are legal, safe, and easy to transport. Use the exclusive code TL15 for 15% off all orders at firebirdtargets.com. Firebird Targets is a proud sponsor of the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, too, with these YouTube. They're in it for the clicks, too. They want to stir shit, especially within our own community. And
that's part of it. But I do think there is a strong belief from a lot of people in our community that you don't talk to the enemy, that you don't go outside of the community, that you don't try to have a conversation to promote understanding because, there's no talking to those people. And it's like, that's just you're not like you're already
Rob, I haven't told you this yet, but I got CBS there's somebody from CBS that contacted. They're interested in doing some short pieces about Walk Talk America, and what they want to do is shine a light on what we're doing to work outside of the firearms community on solutions, right, to collaborative efforts like the convergence stuff and things like that. And it's so funny because I was talking to one of the board members the other day, and I told him to get his first knee-jerk reaction was, be careful. And I'm like, in my head, I'm so confident. I'm like, what is going to happen? It's just like when Avidity, which is the CNN reporter, was like, hey, she actually told me this. She goes, you can record this conversation if you like, if you're more comfortable. And I said, no, I'm not recording anything because I don't have to. If you misquote me, that's going to give me another opportunity for me to go out and defend myself and talk about it. But I don't think you are at this end of this conversation, because I'm not going to hit these standard talking points that turn you off. I'm going to tell you, we have to get out of that mind frame that, hey, we're not as smart as them. They touch our arm. And I
don't think there's a problem. I do record a lot of those interviews and those video things that I do that are outside of the community, especially when they're pretty far out. But at the same time, like I said, I've never been burned. That Huffington Post thing was they sent a reporter into a presentation I did at the NRA. I've never been burned. I think this is true. I don't think I've ever been burned by an interview that I did outside of the gun community, whereas I have been occasionally burned and certainly misquoted and misrepresented inside the gun community, frequently, because I think I say there are those of us who are willing to have these nuanced conversations that go beyond the talking points and dare to suggest that there's people in the world that we can have a conversation with that we may disagree with at the end of the conversation, right? I mean, you guys know I'm not an agree to disagree person. I want to have the conversation. I want to have the debate. I want to have the argument. And then at the end, we still may not agree, but at least we will hopefully understand one another, and that's okay.
Well, I think Mike should record just, again, you've got that extra level of protection there, and the fact that they know that you're recording is going to be less incentive for them to try and, who do you?
She offered it. Right. That's what I love, right? Because so there you go. Like, there's a person offering, like, hey, we could record this. We could do it however you want it. We were only supposed to talk for 45 minutes. We talked for 3.5 hours, for Christ's sake. Like, that's what I'm telling you, though. And what I'm trying to give the listening audience is hope, right? Like, we're not hopeless. We can do this. We can be the leaders when it comes to better mental health and suicide prevention through the firearm. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. I don't even need the mental health community
there either. I'm just saying.
I don't need the mental health community.
You're putting yourself out there and talking again to the people that's hard to talk to, or that we think are hard to talk to. I think that's great. And you're setting that, that standard for this industry. It's like, don't be afraid to talk to somebody who doesn't agree with you. Go out there and get that information out there, put it out there, and don't be afraid. But you also need to protect yourself too. So, just saying.
No, I appreciate that. As you as my friend, I know you're talking to me as a friend there, but I'm just saying
with the AI stuff. He started this whole.
Man, I can't wait. I can't wait till somebody AIs me. Man, that's like a thing. Like, nobody ever made fun of me on Saturday Night Live. I was never on the David Letterman show, but maybe someone will AI me. I don't know.
Yeah, you into the David Letterman show? That would be awesome.
That would have been good. That was like, as a kid, you're like, oh, I like to be on the David Letterman show. That'd be fun. I don't know what I'm going to do. Stupid human tricks.
Come out from underneath the stage like what's his face did? The guy that hit
held down onto it, something. But
what was his name? I can't remember his name. Anyway, he was hilarious. But
I did get on the Daily Show though, so I made I checked that cultural box for the '90s. But going back to the '80s, I never made Letterman.
Yeah, you're probably too young.
Yeah, peaked too early. He peaked too early. Ships that passed in the night. I don't know.
Speaking of peaking, let's take a peek at the Avidity Arms PD10. Is this the 9 or is this the Superfly 30?
This is a 9, but allow me to reach into my pants.
Go ahead. You can do that on this show.
Yeah, this one is the this is a 30 Super.
30 Super.
Clear. Yeah. So you really can't tell the difference. There's a little bit of a ghosted 30 SC logo, the actual logo from Federal, from Vista. You can kind of see it on there, I think, but it's just a little ghosted. There you go. We didn't do a big, like, ostentatious, like 30 super carry etched into the side, just a little bit of a laser. It's a different loaded chamber indicator, different extractor, obviously a different barrel. The breech face has to be a little different. So there are some differences in there. And then we get 12+1 instead of 10+1. So I've been, not all the time, but I have been carrying it a lot since we released the gun. I don't think the round gets nearly as much respect or interest as it should in the community right now. I think it has to do with the timing of when the round was released. Maybe some of the, maybe a little bit of a lack of ahead of time collaboration with some firearms manufacturers that would have helped them get more traction. But just at the time, ammo was super expensive, a new ammo, unproven, quote unquote, round. I think there's a lot of reasons why that round hasn't just taken off over the last couple of years. The industry's been way down anyway the last couple of years, but I do think that this round will see a surge. I think it'll happen before this decade's over, and I think people will really start to appreciate. It's not going to replace 9, but it's also not going to go away. It's not the 45 gap. And as I've told everybody in this last year, if 5.7, which was dead for 20 years, except for one government contract and FN's persistence. If that round can be seeing the surge that it's seen over the last few years, with Ruger and Smith & Wesson and so many CMMG, so many other companies getting on board with it. And it's an anemic, horrible round, really, except as a novelty. The 30 Super Carry is a legit round, and people can see the gel tests at Personal Defense Network and see what the round's all about if they're not familiar with it. But I'm a big fan of it. And the fact that the PD-10 is a new gun, Avidity is a new company. We're focused on defense. We built not necessarily what people have been asking for, but what we really think will serve a lot of people well. I think that's what the federal team did. Nobody was asking for another round, but they came up with ammunition that really suits personal defense carry needs really, really well. And they brought it to market, even though everybody, I'm sure, told them it was a bad idea. And when we decided to chamber our gun for it, everybody in the industry just about everybody in the industry that wasn't involved in it in some way was like, oh, that's a horrible idea. That round's dead. Why would you do that? We did it because kind of it's the right thing to do. And the round and the gun go together really, really well.
So talk about the differences. And I want you to talk about the PD9 or PD10, because a lot of our listeners aren't familiar with that. But the 9 and the 30 Super Carry, what are the differences in the?
So if we pop that in here, yeah, let me grab a. So obviously the diameter is the main thing, right? Is the diameter of the round and of the barrel is the main thing. So this is actually a 32 caliber bullet. There are all kinds of reasons why it's 30 Super Carry, not 32 Super Carry, but I'll let the federal guys talk about that. So you've got 9mm and you've got 30 Super Carry. So the round is a lighter round. So it's 100 grain generally. I mean, there are some 95s, there's some 105s, there's a couple other grains out there. But basically 100 grain bullet versus your standard, this is a 124, 115 to 124 is usually what you're going to see, or up to 147 in the subsonics for 9mm. So you've got a faster moving, narrower projectile. So what you end up with is, when you do the math, you kind of have that 9mm versus 45. Well, we all know 9mm won the argument of faster, lighter bullet, but you can get more rounds into the target and hold more rounds in your gun over any given period of time or for any size of a gun. And 9mm won out over 45 because, while 45 is, quote unquote, more powerful as a faster, slower bullet with a wider diameter, so fewer rounds, heavier bullet, generally in the same, if everything's equal, it's a slower round to fire if the guns are the same. So 9mm won. Well, if you use the same metrics, 30 Super Carry should win. But 9mm, again, I think if these two rounds were introduced, if this were 100 years ago, 30 Super Carry would win. The fact that this is an established round, it's not going anywhere. But for maybe the discerning or more educated person interested in concealed carry, it's not a duty round. It's not that you need a heavier round for intermediate barriers. It's a lighter round. But for personal defense, this round will do everything you want it to do. And I think they made a little bit of a mistake when they first started advertising it, when they said it's like between 380 and 30 and 9mm. While that's true, it's kind of like saying a Dodge Neon is between a smart car and a Corvette. Well, it is, but the Dodge Neon is way down by the smart car. It's nothing like the Corvette. It would have been smarter to say that, you could say like a Camaro ZL1 or Camaro SS is between a smart car and a Corvette. Like 30 Super Carry is much closer to 9mm than it is to the 380. And I think that was a mistake they made. So the recoil issue is an issue. It is because it's a lighter bullet. You don't get as much recoil impulse. So again, all things being equal, I think a very fast shooter can shoot 30 Super Carry faster to the point where, like, by your 4th, 5th, or 6th round in a string of fire, up close, chest size target, 10, 20 feet, you're probably getting that 5th shot out instead of a 4th shot, or the 6th shot out instead of a 5th shot, if you're already a very fast shooter and you're good with your gun. For a split times, you're not going to see a big difference between a split time, just 2 shots. But over an extended string of fire into a chest, defensive shooting style, close range, I do think you'd get 30 Super Carry faster. I think the biggest thing most people have jumped on is the idea that you can get more rounds in a similar size gun. So again, our gun that is 10+1, where's my 9mm? Now I can't mix them up. My 10+1 in 9mm is a 12+1 with the same magazine in 30 Super Carry. So for some people, that's a big dial mover in terms of the PD10. I think most of the people, we did 2 runs, we're in our 2nd run. We released 1 run of 30 Super Carry guns and sold it out. I think most of the people who bought it were already fans of 30 Super Carry. They didn't like what was offered, a very, very expensive niche 1911 and a couple Smith & Wesson guns that had very short barrels and some other potential hiccups that kept people from being interested in them. The PD10 shows up as a thin, modern striker-fired mid-sized gun with a 4-inch barrel, and people are already curious about 30 Super Carry, and they said, oh, now I have a gun I can buy that's chambered in the round I'm interested in. I think as time goes on, there'll be more people who are interested in the PD10 who are doing an apples to apples. Do I want 9 or do I want 30 Super? And as 30 Super Carry has come way down in price, the training ammo especially, and it's becoming more common, I think, over the next few years. I think you'll see more people choose the PD10 and 30 Super Carry out of a real comparison, an educated consumer kind of comparison, because they were interested in the PD10 and then realized they had a choice, as opposed to now the people that are buying the 30 Super Carry, they were already interested in the 30 Super Carry.
What got you interested in it? How did you get hooked on that?
A dare, basically. Yes. Friend.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, industry friend who. So I'll tell you exactly how it started. There was a meme going around where it was like, I don't know, 32 Magnum or 32 H&1, whatever that 32 caliber revolver round that came out a few years ago that died, 45 gap, 5.7, because this was before the big 5.7 surge. It was like the Knights of the Round Table with all the swords and all this. They were all dead rounds, and then like the next sword being put down was 30 Super Carry, and I think I shared it, and I shared it, and immediately got guys I'm friends with over there. They reached out and like, come on, you too, man. I'm like, look, I don't get it, man. Like, why? And then they're like, have you really looked at it? And what I realized was I hadn't really, between being so distracted with getting the PD10 launched and the way the industry's been and really focusing on the training company because that's where the revenue's coming from. I really hadn't given the round at all a fair shot. I hadn't really researched it. I hadn't done my own gel tests. I hadn't done the math, and I hadn't looked at the ballistics. I didn't really understand what I was making fun of, except the idea of why would an ammo company come out with something nobody was asking for. And in saying that and confronting that, I realized, holy shit, this is exactly what people are doing to the PD10. Is they're asking me, why would I come out with this gun when I think all the metrics and measurements and compromises necessary for a personal carry gun are well met with something that isn't on the market by the PD10. A lot of people were saying, why would you do that when everybody wants 15 rounds in a 3-inch barreled gun? And why would you do a mid-size gun that allows a full-size grip but is only 10+1? And I realized all of a sudden, okay, not only am I doing a disservice to like my friends in the industry and professionals, and like they aren't going to come out with something that isn't at least reasonably well researched. I also was buying into the same thing that was making my own startup company harder to get started up. So I did the gel tests. I started doing the research, understood what the round was, and then and Mike was witness to this, from the side in the early moments before as a company, before we really moved forward. Some of it was kind of the engineering dare of, well, it can't be that hard. Like if the way I'm doing the math, we should be able to make this gun run 30 super carry very, very easily. And that was pretty much true. But what we found was, to make it work very reliably, like to the level that we needed it to be reliable, we had to change some things that we didn't have to change for the test firing. So we were able to test fire the gun, and it ran well enough that we knew it was within reach. Then we ended up changing the extractor and changing the magazine follower and a couple other little tweaks to really make sure the gun was a personal defense standard. If we're going to sell a personal defense gun with a personal defense round, it has to be reliable enough that people can depend on it, obviously. So that was really where the fine tuning of the engineering came in. And we had a lot of support from Federal. They were excited that we were doing it. And when I say support, it wasn't like they sent us money and R&D and, gave us their machine time or anything, but they did send a lot of test ammo, and they've done a great job of spreading the word and sharing the news through their marketing and advertising to say, hey, there's another company out there with a gun, and we're the only 4-inch barreled gun out on the market right now being produced. And this round is really probably optimized. Like you could probably go out to about a 10-inch barrel. So like a 30 super carry PDW would be pretty interesting to see with the velocities you'd get on the bullet. But right now, like the best velocities you're going to
see a sub 2000 with the 30 super.
Something like, High Point has a 30 super carry version of their
carbine.
Their carbine, yeah. So that is out there, and I think it has a 12. I guess it has a 16-inch barrel, but I think they may have a pistol version, braced version, or whatever that's 12-inch. I have not run the numbers on that, but again, because it's a carbine and you've got a 16-inch barrel, your friction is overtaking. You can only get so much powder, right? It's a pistol round, so you're going to get more friction. You're going to drop off velocity past probably 10 or 11 inches is what I believe from the engineering. So I'd love to try to come up with some kind of a braced, AR pistol that takes a Glock style mag with narrower feed lips for 30 super carry, something like that would be pretty interesting to optimize around. But right now we do have the 5-inch barreled long slide prototypes shooting it as well. So when we're ready to go to our double stack, our double stack will actually be 22+1 with 30 super carry. Nice. 5-inch barreled gun.
So you have plans of coming out with a double stack?
Yep.
PD10.
Yeah. As we're a startup company. We're not looking for investors. We're not looking to take out any loans. So we're slow growth, slow, steady, moving forward. We added the AR line because it was relatively easy because a lot of the R&D and the machining and the capabilities we had here in the building were there. Partnered up with Nemo, who make an incredible upper, basically the Battle Light upper in 223 Wylde. We dropped it on our A-SAR lowers. So we added that to the line. But as far as getting another mold done and investing the 6-figure number that it takes to get the double stack out on the market, that 6-figure number has to be generated by the sale of the original gun and some of the other accessories and things we've got. So we're continuing to move forward towards that. But I almost hesitate sometimes to talk about it, because then somebody, I'm going to wait for the double stack. Well, if you wait for the double stack, there's not going to be a double stack from Avidity Arms, because we got to stay alive and generate enough revenue to make that happen. Actually,
get it, yeah. So you said you came out with
these are actually the 3D printed prototypes, and I think I'm trying to do this live, but all right, we'll make sure that was clear.
Good. This is recorded.
And the idea here is that So the idea here is that the parts should be interchangeable, just about all of them. The magazine catch obviously has to be different. Some other pins have to be a little longer, but generally speaking, the magazine is going to be different. Generally speaking, if you own a single stack PD10, you'll be able to get the double stack frame, drop that on there. The 4-inch and the 5-inch will all be interchangeable, and it'll all be modular like that. And you can see we keep a lot of the same contouring. We just are a much larger magazine but it's very slim up at the top, which is a big part of our ergonomics, is accommodating as many hand shapes and sizes as possible, but without being, most of your very thin guns are also very narrow front to back. And you get this broomsticky effect where your fingers just kind of swallow the gun. And what the PD10 does is it uses what I would call a standard front to back width, but a very, very narrow side to side width. So our slide is actually 0.9 inches. The widest part of the gun is out at the outside of the slide stop. And the contouring here gets us down to 0.7 inches. 0.8 inches for most of the grip. Some places come out to 0.9 to match the slide, and you have plenty of room. I wear an XL glove, not super large hands, but a little bit larger, I think, than average. And I can obviously very easily get a comfortable two-handed grip because the space is left here. But if I had very short fingers and short digits, I still would be able to get around these contours and reach the magazine release, reach the slide stop, and reach the trigger because of how narrow this is. And a lot of people look at the trigger guard and are like, oh, you have a long trigger guard, like for gloved hands, like it's 1980 military procurement bid or something. It's not for long hands or not for gloved hands. It's for large hands or for people with long fingers coming from the safety index point on the frame to the trigger. We don't want them to run into the trigger guard. So if somebody has a longer finger, as they curve it, it's still going to come in. They aren't going to run into the front of the trigger guard if we made it what would be the normal proportions, I guess, for a mid-sized gun.
Yeah. Very nice. So the which screens here? So the PD10 that you have there, 9mm. Talk about the feedback that you've been getting from the end user. So it's been out almost 2 years now, or a year and a half. What kind of feedback?
People who have bought it, generally it's like super positive feedback. Like they knew what they were getting into. They wanted a gun that they could carry and shoot. And I think that's one of the problems that I wanted to address with the gun design is a lot of people come to classes, for people who don't know, I run Personal Defense Network and ICE training company. And since 2001, training and teaching mostly around defensive shooting, personal defense, home defense, stuff like that, military, law enforcement, armed professionals has been what I've done as a career. And lots of hands on lots of guns. And lots of people that come to classes and you say, okay, how many of you, carry at least 4 or 5 days a week? Lots of hands go up. Okay. Keep your hand in the air if the gun you're using and the holster you're using are the same and set up the same as how you normally carry. And lots of hands go down. And it's like, okay, you, sir, in the blue shirt, why did your hand go down? Well, I said, what do you carry? Well, I carry a 365. Okay. What are you shooting today? 320 Legion in a drop leg. It's like, okay, so that's, what about you, sir, in the red shirt? Oh, I carry a Glock 43. Okay. What are you shooting today? Glock 17 Zev, and it's like, all right, well, so people come to classes with guns that are easy to shoot. And all you have to do is go watch range pictures, or go look at range pictures and watch range videos from most of the classes out there that the big instructors, the big schools are running. You see a lot of guns that don't look like carry guns and a lot of people wearing outfits and cosplaying, tack gear that isn't how they conceal carry at the mall when they're taking their kids to this park or the store or whatever. So we wanted to address that. We wanted a gun that was shootable and carryable and would fit as many hands as possible. And so that's where the thinness and the contouring and the ergonomics come in. It's good quality sights, iron sights, the Claw blacked out rear sight that I did about 12 years ago with Ameriglow, Luma Square on the front with the tritium insert. Obviously it's optics ready now. We did originally launch the gun as with an optics ready slide and a non-optic slide, but we have, obviously the order is overwhelmingly the industry since we first came up with this idea, and design has shifted to just about all the legit carry guns are optic ready. So all of our guns are optic ready now.
Why would you just not make them all optics ready now? Anyway?
Right. Yeah. So that's what we're doing now is we have a couple in inventory, but it's just not worth the logistics. This is a more expensive the reason to not do it is this costs me about $40 more. So the machining time, the 2 screws, the plate, the having to get the plate treated with isonite, just like we do the rest of the slide, like that costs literally like $37.95 more when I buy the gun, when I pay for the gun. Right. So that goes into the cost of the gun. And originally we launched with the MSRP $599 for the non-optic and $625 for the optic cut. And since we didn't have a lot of people interested in the $599, saving $25 to not have the optic, we've just switched over and we figure we'll amortize the cost. So we haven't had any price increases over the last couple of years since we set those prices, but now all the guns are optic ready. One of the other important things is that our optic ready guns, the way this gun is contoured and cut, everything sits really low in the hand, obviously for recoil management and alignment and all that. We also have the optics can be used with the iron sights. You don't need to go to suppressor height sights with most of the designs out there. The Hollow Sun 407, 507K are probably the most popular optics that we see dropped onto them. But anything that fits that shield RMS-C footprint is what will fit the gun. And most of the guns, especially the higher quality, most of the optics, especially the higher quality ones, like I said, you can still use these sights. We have the threaded barrel, we have the oversized mag release. We have some accessories like as far as that stuff goes. We got black frames and gray frames. And that's it. I mean, it's a purpose-built gun. And what we want is for people to appreciate it for what it is. We don't need to sell 50,000 of them a year. We sell 5,000 of them a year. We're really happy. We sell 2,500 of them a year. We're still doing good. And there are 2,500 people a year who understand what the gun is and why the gun is what it is. 2,500 guns a year. It's going to take us a lot longer to get that double stack to the market, which is what more people say they're interested in, is a higher capacity gun. But we weren't interested in trying to chase that trend. Like that became cool. It's entirely possible that super slim single stacks become cool in 3 years, and who knows, and we'll have the double stack sitting on the shelf and these things will be flying off the shelf.
They have their place,
for sure.
The single stack super slim, they obviously have their place.
And there really isn't a gun. I tell people, like I said at Gold Show, like, go walk the floor, go find a mid-size or full-size gun that's this thin on this floor, and I'll give you one for free. And you can't. You can find a Glock 43, not the 43X, which is really a 48S, short-barreled Glock 48. The 43 is slim. The 42 is slim, but they're compact guns, right? The XDS is a slim gun, but it's also incredibly heavy and bulky and high over the hand when it comes to slot. I used to carry one. Carried Glock 48 when it first came out, before this gun was ready. I know the other guns that are out there on the market, and there is no mid-size gun that's this thin on the market. So as far as hand fit and carryability, we have great holster support too, which is really important. We have a lot of great holster companies from launch. I think that was incredibly important. In the same way, I think one of the misses from the federal team is if they'd have had more firearms collaboration and support when they launched that 30 Super Carry, that round would be incredibly popular right now. I think it was important, if we're going to launch a defensive gun, we had to have really good holster support. So JM4 Tactical, G-Code, Crossbreed, Cold War Concealment, CYA Supply. Now there's like a dozen companies making about 20 different holster models for the gun.
Have you talked to Mission First yet?
I have, actually. So what's funny is this Mission First bag, I talked to Dave about doing a holster, and he's like, well, we're really focused on getting these bags launched. And I'm like, I just came back from a Puerto Rico trip with that bag. They're awesome bags. We use their magazines. We use their stock on the A-SAR. You can see over here. So big fan of Mission First. They have a universal type holster that will fit the gun. But they don't have one that's specifically, and they're in the same boat we are with the double stack. They would have to pay for a mold because of the way their holsters are made. And for them to pay for that mold to do the holsters that they're making, we have to have a higher volume in order for them to justify that. So I think it'll be a minute or two before we see a custom PD10, a specific PD10 model from MFT, but I'll be looking forward to it.
Do your guns come with a holster?
No, we don't ship with a holster. And the reason, like I said, think about our market, right? Our target market are people who are really going to train and really going to practice, really going to carry. They know what kind of holsters they like. They know that if they like the hybrid from Crossbreed, if they want the leather from JM4, if they want, like I use the Synchron a lot from G-Code. So that they know, this is the Phenom. The Synchron is another one I've got sitting over here that is the outside the waistband. They know how they carry, and it's very specific, right? The person who is our customer is going to be very specific about which gun or which type of holster they carry and where they carry it on their body. So I think that it's a little bit, I want to say it's a wasteful throwaway kind of thing. But for most of our customers and the people that I really want to have the PD10, it'd be a throwaway holster. We have shipped the gun with a lot of Paradigm holsters from G-Code, though, as a starter holster. A lot of the retailers have been hesitant to take the PD10 in because it's like, if they take in a new gun, then they also have to take in a new holster, and holsters just take up so much space in a retail environment. It's very hard to support, because if somebody comes in and falls in love with the gun, I want to buy one, I want to carry it. Do you have a holster for it? It's like, no. Well, do you have something else in the case that you do have a holster for? And the Paradigm from G-Code is a $30 sort of starter holster that's very high quality, ambidextrous, and it can be set up for inside or outside the waistband. So that Paradigm has really helped fill the gap for somebody who wants the gun but doesn't know what holster they want to carry with yet, like the new gun owner.
Any of these holsters have the are they light ready for the?
Yeah. So Creekside Consultants makes a light ready one, and depending on when this drops, G Code I think is about to release the Synchron that is light ready as well. So there are a couple options, and I think Cold War Concealment might also have one in their lineup. Also, so there's some. I've kind of, like I said, there's so many companies making holsters for the gun now that I've lost a little bit of track of exactly what everybody has. But it was really important to me that we supported everything. Almost all of the holsters, I can't think of any of the models that aren't also optic compatible. So the optic ready on the holsters, most of them accept the threaded barrel. Tac Rig is one that has an enclosed front that doesn't accept the barrel unless you specifically say, I want to be able to put a threaded barrel in there. And then they have a model that's opened up at the bottom. So there's a lot of options out there.
So let's talk about the AR that you guys are making.
Yeah. So the A-SAR, when I did the I did call it the A-SAR. I think I'm hooked up back here. Hold on. Oh boy. Nope. I'm going to have to get up out of my seat. So the A-SAR is called the A-SAR because
Ooh, you used the first buttstock like that.
Yeah. Now I had this weapon mounted light was hooked up on a punt gun in my crazy display back there. So the A-SAR was set up specifically for people who are interested in a really high quality gun, specifically like defensive purposes. I mean, you could hunt with it, you could target shoot with it, you can compete with it. I guess you can do all those things with it as well. But it's really set up as a defensive gun. And the idea here is that we have our lower, which I'll get into the detail specifics of that. We make that on a machine about 20 feet outside my office door on the factory side. We've got Mission First tactical stock. We talked about them. We've got the black collar arms grip, which I just love the angle and the contouring of. And everybody who grabs this is like, wow, that's cool. Are you making that grip?
It looks a lot like your PD-10 grip.
It actually does. And it's really that part's accidental. But what I like about it is it's basically zero angle here. So, if you're training with, again, these guns are for people who are going to rely on them, are going to stage them, and then are going to train with them and practice with them for defensive use, or armed professionals in the case of the AR. So when you're out on the range all day, especially in that low ready, any of those sharper angles, the 22, 21 degree angles, they really compromise the wrist and really create a lot of fatigue and impingement. This zero angle here is really much more forgiving and easier on this, but it's not a stick. A lot of the zero angle, or like even the 15 degree angle or 11 degree angle stuff, they're little broomsticks. Again, they get lost in a normal human sized hand, let alone a large hand. So this still gives you plenty to hold on to. The flat front is nice. I really like that to push the gun back into the palm. And then we've got the Nemo upper, and the Nemo upper is really important because I didn't want, and Mike can attest to this, I did not want to be another AR company. We even had a discussion a couple of years ago about launching Avidity Arms with an AR because it was low bar. It would have been easy enough to do. But I didn't want to have 5-6 years of telling people we were bringing a pistol to market and then launch as an AR company just to quote unquote generate revenue. So it was about a year ago. Getting ready to go to NASGW. We had prototyped out the lower. In fact, I think there's a 3D printed AR lower right over there. It was one of the first ones to check the magwell. I'll get into magwell in a sec. And I called my friends over at Nemo, who sponsor the Personal Defense Network training tour. I said, I know you guys have expanded your manufacturing capability a lot over the last few years. Would you even consider collaborating with us on an AR type weapon using your upper, using one or another version of your uppers? And they were totally into it. They're like, absolutely, that sounds cool. So this is a 223 Wylde chambered battle light upper, kind of the standard go-to 223. You can see I got my Nemo Omen there. That's 300 Win Mag.
I love Nemo.
Yeah.
Firearms, love them.
They're super awesome. So they said yes, and then we were off to the races. And then we actually even changed some of the aesthetic design cuts in our lower to match the Nemo upper. So they really do go well together. You could build off of our lower and put any upper you want on it. And we do have some other uppers that we built, some other versions, but our standard A-SAR, and A-SAR stands for Avidity Semi-Automatic Rifle. One of the things we make a big deal about, right, in our community, we talk about the gun rights thing and the ignorance that's out there, is AR doesn't stand for assault rifle. It's Armalite, and it's like, well, then why are we all calling them ARs if we're not that company, right? So I'm like, all right, so we're going to call this, to be consistent with the things we keep saying out there, we're going to call this the A-SAR. So the A-SAR is Avidity semi-automatic rifle. And again, it's kind of subtle in there, but it's in there.
Sure.
And really the trick here, we did some things that are just purely aesthetic and comfort and ergonomics, and like our cut here, our cut down here. These things are designed for long-term comfort, standing on the range, either standing in the ready position, behind a barricade with your family behind you, or if you're out on the training range for 6-7 hours a day, you don't want all those impingement, all those sharp edges. So this is all contoured really nicely. We have our safety index point, which again is like the styling cue and a useful safety index point from the PD-10. Where should I put my trigger finger? Right there. No question about it, not somewhere else. So we have the safety index point in the lower on both sides. But the magwell is really the trick. And this is what kind of got Rob Pincus' mind to say, yeah, okay, we're not just another AR company. We were actually bringing something novel to the community. And what's novel and interesting here is this internally funneled magwell. So the IF and the IF magwell is internally funneled. And I couldn't believe it. I went and talked to guys like, Paul Leitner-Wise, and SHOT Show last year. I went by Randy Luth's booth. I started talking to him. Guys who have been in the AR industry for a long time. A lot of the people in the training community. Don Edwards at Green Line Tactical works with a bunch of AR companies. Guys with long-term military experience, special operations experience. Has anybody ever done this before? Has anybody brought an internally funneled magazine well that lets you it's a little bit more forgiving on that ridge on the back of the magazine when you put it in? Has anybody done this before? And I pretty much universally got a no, and I got maybe a puzzled, why would you? Oh yeah. And it's like, okay, so once they buy in, they're like, that makes sense. I don't know why nobody's done it. It's like, well, why do you think? And it comes down to things like, well, nobody ever thought of it, or it's not on the blueprint for mil spec, or no customers are asking for it, or whatever. So without
accessories you could throw on there.
Yeah, you could still do any of the accessories you want.
That's the reason why they haven't done it, is because you could get aftermarket mag, those flares.
Well, but that's the thing, is now when you do that, you do a couple of things. One, you expand the size of the gun, right? So you create more size and weight to get in the way or to have to carry around. The other thing you do is you extend the distance with those magwells. You extend the distance between your hand and the inside the chamber. If you have to lock the gun open and clear a double feed, any kind of complex malfunction where you're coming up here to put pressure on that second round, right? People know how to strip a magazine and try to clear a double feed. You're extending the distance to reach up there and do that. Now, other people have cut windows in the magwells or relieved this area to address that issue, but we were able to do both. So we open up the magwell in the back, internally funneled. So we make it easier to load the gun without expanding the size of the magwell, and then actually cut the relief so that shorter fingers or weaker fingers, you have more leverage to clear a double feed up here. And the front lip we left on, let me grab a mag real quick. The front lip that we left on there.
With us, Mike?
What that allows us to do.
You got to let him go. You got to let him do his thing.
Yeah, I'm just doing my thing. The lip on there, what that allows is obviously any magazine, you're carrying it on your belt, in your pocket, on a chest rig, wherever it is. When you move forward, you're actually hitting that front lip and then you rock it back in. I'm not going to load the gun, but you actually hit that lip and then rock it back. If you're new to this, right? We generally teach people to find the magwell and then go straight up. This one, again, is a little more forgiving, and you come in at that angle. There's no problem with coming straight up and in with your standard technique. But again, you can be 3 to 5 degrees off, and it's still going to get funneled up into the chamber, which is what that's all about. So if you have to reload, or if you have a complex malfunction, this magwell makes it easier to deal with. So this is on the market for $1,626 is the MSRP. And like I said, we're working on a couple other things. We did a 22 rimfire version of the gun for Massachusetts because they can't have centerfire semi-auto AR type guns. Cape Gun Works does exclusively. We actually have their CGW embedded into the serial numbers for them. And I'm working on a 300 blackout side charger that I've been playing around with for about 2 months. And it's a really cool little AR pistol. We call it the A-SAR. So the Avidity semi-automatic pistol.
Why are you doing side charging?
I've always been a big fan of side. Like if I were going to change anything, and since I guess now I own a gun company, right? So if I'm going to change anything about the AR, it's going to be the location of the charging handle. So with a side charger, particularly a left side charger for a right-handed shooter, it's easier to manipulate that. You have more leverage and strength, and you can do it in more confined space up against your body and everything else. So I'm a big fan of side charger. And what I've been experimenting with is the left side charger to see if we can get all the ergonomics right so that it would be reliable enough and cool enough. Oh yeah, there you go. So see, and I've just never been an AK guy. And I think AKs, it's amazing. Like the AKs have a lot of parts and ergonomics and manual of arms of AKs have evolved to be very AR-like, let's say, right? Much easier to get safeties off. You got accessories where you can run the safety with your thumb now. I think there's bolt lock open now on some AKs. Like AK has you're pure, right? But there are a lot of things out there where you can even lock the bolt open. You get the little notch in there, right? So you've got guys who are more pure and less pure on their AKs. I do think that the charging handle out in kind of in the middle of the gun is a smarter thing. SCAR, I hate it. It's like a beast. It's like this big, giant, bulky, just unusable thing, but it has the charging handle. Like that's good. Is that what is it? I don't even know what that is.
That is a Kel-Tec PL30.
Oh yeah. See. So, I mean, you look at that and you talked earlier about how like the kids at the school shooting probably are more, going to recognize an AK versus an AR. I don't think anybody knows what that is, even if it has the magazine in it, but especially if it doesn't have the magazine in it, right? Somebody who's looking for the traditional AK look looks at that and says, "No, it's not an AK."
Yeah.
Like when you first held it up, I wasn't sure if it was a SIG, right? Like a SIG 551 or something with a side charger. But I think
my earlier statement. I'm just saying kids are more apt to identify firearms in general than
absolutely. And I think that's true, but I think even gun owner, I mean, I'm a kind of a gun guy, right? I've been around a little bit. When you first held that up, I wasn't sure what you were showing me, if it was another AK or if it was like a SIG with a side charger. But I think that the advantage of a left side charger for a right-handed shooter, you don't have to worry about that. But for most of us, I think there's an advantage to having it on the right side or on the left side for the right hand to keep that strong hand on the gun.
Company out there that is known for their side chargers, Bear Creek Arsenal. Are you familiar with Bear Creek?
I have been playing around with their side chargers because they are one of the few with a left side charger option on their upper. So I actually have a Bear Creek Arsenal upper on an A-SAR lower that I put a Shaw 300 blackout barrel on. And one thing I'm not thrilled with their charging handle. So I have a prototype charging handle that attaches to their bolt. And that's the whole package that I've been working on for Avidity. But I use their right hand side charger 22 Magnum and 22 long rifle uppers as part of our Cape Gunworks package.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Very nice. Now, are you milling the uppers also?
We can, but right now, while we have a few in-house that I've been building different things off of, like what I'm most interested in, again, I don't want to be an AR company, right? I was jokingly saying last year, going through the fall, NASGW going into SHOT Show, like Marty doesn't have to worry, Marty Daniel doesn't have to worry. We're not going to try to become an AR company. Little did I know he was going to try to come into my world and release a pistol, albeit somebody else's pistol at SHOT Show. But at any rate, I was, that was my thing, is I don't want to do an AR. I don't want to be like a one-stop shop.
Is that the Hudson?
Yeah, the Hudson. The Hudson came back as the Daniel H9 or whatever, but so we do make an upper in here. US Rifle is actually the company that got my partner's company AlphaTech into ARs. May not got them into it, but US Rifle uses an upper and a lower that's made out on that same machine. They make beautiful rifles, and their upper, obviously we can take that same one they're doing and put it right on this one, and it works really well. But I'm not that interested in building a complete rifle, right? I'd rather work with companies like Nemo or companies like DCA.
Mil spec lower.
It's billet, so it's not really mil spec, right? Like because like for example, this is not mil spec, obviously, clearly, like the Magwell, right? So
but
the trick is it will take just about any standard part. The one place you have to be careful is because of the way, and this is true, I think, with almost every billet gun. You have to be careful if you want an oversized bolt catch, which I generally like on a gun, but it has to be one that will work with the way that this is actually sculpted and designed. And we don't use the push pin. We don't use the set pin. We use the screw-in pin, like Aero Precision makes one, but we make our own here in-house, a screw-in pin to hold the bolt catch and bolt release. So the oversized bolt catch is probably the one piece I would warn people, like, make sure it fits. But there are plenty that fit. I don't happen to have one on this demo gun, but there are plenty that fit into the lower. But other than that, I haven't run into any other concern as far as putting in standard parts.
So like I was saying Bear Creek Arsenal, you wanted that side charge. If you wanted to put one of their uppers on your lower, it should fit.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think I hear people say any upper will fit. Well, you really can't control that. It kind of depends on their tolerances and everything else. I will say that I have tried to put some uppers on our lower, and it's a tight fit. But it's within dimensions for mil spec. But if you have an oversized, that especially the rear takedown pin, if that little stub that sticks out there, if that is on the wider side of the tolerances, you'll have to really mean it when you try to put it into our lower, but it'll fit. If you find one that won't fit, it's out of spec. But we do know that our tolerances are pretty narrow here.
Any grip, we still.
Yep. Any of the grips, I mean, you can put a standard A2 type grip on there. Any of those should fit in there. Because of the way we've cut this, some of the grips, and I've seen this again on other ARs as well. Some of the grips are very large here, and that pushes back, and it might stand out over that edge.
Beaver tail on them.
Yeah. So, now the ones with the beaver tail will integrate fine. The ones that are just large and kind of over what I would say like over molded here, then there might be an awkward ledge. But I haven't seen that be a problem. I could just imagine there might be some out there where that would be a problem. Same thing here. Because we've contoured this, we left it wide here, but it's very rounded, and then it gets narrow and it's rounded as well. So you might have a integration. What's that?
I noticed you did something on the trigger guard there also. You kind of cut it out. You got to cut out in the lower part of the trigger guard. Is that just to lighten it up, or? It's
aesthetics. Technically it makes it a little bit lighter. I used to be a big fan of super light guns, right? Like talk about doing something first. Like when I teamed up with Mag Tactical probably around 2010 or 2011, and we came out with the first 5-pound gun. We called it the Air 15 IC.
No, I remember that. I think we talked about that.
Yeah. So that was a 5-pound gun with an optic. And that was pretty, but I'm kind of over the light gun. I think most people that was a fad for a while, and I was full on. I was there for it, but you really don't want a gun that light. So this gun, depending on how you set it up, it's going to come in around 6.5 pounds total. That's how it ships with the Nemo. It's a heavy. It's not a heavy barrel, but it's not a pencil barrel like some of the other guns that are out there. They do have their new narrow forend, which is really nice. But yeah, that cut there is more aesthetics than anything else. I could tell you, it would prevent ice buildup if you drop your gun in a lake and leave it there while the lake freezes. It'll be easier to chip the ice out, I suppose. That's the one tactical advantage.
What's
Mike? You got anything else on this? Mike helps with marketing sometimes. Mike.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you're doing a great job, Rob. Keep it up.
But why is this here? This is your idea, wasn't it?
That freedom.
Freedom. That's the freedom slot.
Freedom.
Yeah, it's a freedom slot.
Good job, Mike.
Freedom. But the billet lower that you guys have there, do you have the lower just for sale?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes. It's not a cheap lower, but if somebody was super excited about,
I'm super excited.
I'm not even going to try that. I'm just going to hold on to it. If somebody wanted to buy a lower, they can get the lower for their own build because we knew people would be interested. In fact, at the Gold Show, we bumped into a small company that does builds, and they aren't making their own lowers anyway. And they were really interested in getting their hands on a few of these. So we shipped a few out to them.
I'm interested. I want to do a complete mission first build with it. So
I like it.
You said Shaw Barrels. I met those guys at they were the booth right next to us at the Goals event.
Big fan of Shaw Barrels. In fact, you knew Mike Seguin, right? Blown Deadline.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of guns that he was, he had his art hand on. The last one that he did for me actually is a Shaw custom And I was up at his shop. He expanded into doing a lot more powder coating and doing some more stuff. And I was up at his shop in Michigan, I guess it was about a year and a half ago now, and dropped this off. And he did this really cool piece. I asked him to do tiger stripe, and we talked about it. We went back and forth on some text, and then I dropped it off. And then he sent me the pictures of it. He's like, "Hey man, I finally got your stock done. Sorry it took me so long. Been super busy. It looks badass." And he sent me the pictures, and I was like, I had to go back and look at the text. I was like, bro, like, sweet,
But not
BDU camo, but this isn't. He's like, "Oh man, I'll redo it." And I'm like, "No, the story is going to be funnier if I take it, because it's beautiful. If I just take it, like, it's a better story that the artist is always right. Like what do you want me to do? I'll do what I want." And now it's definitely, it's a great rifle, and Shaw makes a great barrel, and now they build these great rifles. But this is going to be a very special piece that'll never leave my collection, because Mike's hand was on it. So
absolutely, sorely missed.
For sure, already, yeah.
So it's Shaw barrel that you're using. You're using Nemo handguard.
Well, no, we're actually using the full Nemo Battle Light upper. So everything on the A-SAR is Nemo. That whole upper, including the nickel boron coated. It landed on a case. The bolt carrier group, all of this is Nemo on the A-SAR. So everything, and that's why we have their 223 Wylde chamber, which I'm totally cool with for reliability with 5.56 or 223. So everything up here is Nemo.
For those who don't know, 223 Wylde, you can also shoot 5.56.
Yeah. So 223 Wylde is a chamber cut. It's not, you can't go buy 223 Wylde ammunition. 223 Wylde is a chambering design that accommodates 5.56 and 223 and sort of meets in the middle and is optimized to work well with both. So if you have, go to the end, I'm not even going to get into the debate because I'll say something wrong and you'll be in the comments about somebody will tell me
let them debate. Who cares?
A decimal wrong, but there is a difference technically between 5.56 NATO rounds and 223 Remington rounds. And while they are generally seen as interchangeable in modern times, that is not always the case and has not always been the case. And 223 Wylde addresses that concern for people. And it just gives you a more reliable chamber for either round.
Follow your manufacturer's recommendations on.
As always.
As always. Well, that's really exciting. I did not know before this show that you guys had the AR out, the SAR, right?
A-SAR. I know. I have to make things difficult. Mike said just call it an AR, and I said no. Everybody will get it instantly, and now he's right.
A-SAR. I mean, you got to brand it. It's all about the branding.
I think so, but I like I said, the reason I really did it was because this sticking point that we make we lose our minds generally as a community. Like AR doesn't mean assault rifle. It's tied to the original manufacturer. Like, okay, well then no other manufacturer should be using AR.
Yeah, quit calling them ARs then.
Yeah, so I call this an A-SAR because Avidity is the automatic rifle.
MSR nomenclature a lot now within the industry.
Yeah,
rifle.
And I know why people push back against that, because that's like the modern sporting rifle. This isn't the military style rifle, and it's like that's a little too placating for me. But this is a name that is tied to our company, which is where the original AR came from. So that's why I went that way. And if we get a military or government, any kind of government purchase where somebody wants an Avidity automatic rifle, we'll sell them an AAR for sure.
There you go. Automatic Avidity automatic.
I don't mind.
Yeah. Well, there you go. For all our government agencies that are listening right now, there's an opportunity.
Yeah,
for
we know you're out there. Bring the orders.
Bring it to these guys. So the website for Avidity Arms is avidityarms.com. You guys can go there. Everything we've been talking about is on there. The 30 Super Carry, the PD-10, the A-SAR rifle is on there. 223 Wylde. I dig it, man. I really like the look. I like the way you went with the magwell, and it's a lot of extra real estate that shouldn't be on the rifle anyway. I mean,
yeah, like I said, I didn't want to do just another gun, and I wanted to work with companies that I loved, like Mission First, Black Collar, Nemo. They're real easy companies to work with, and I've done things with them for years. Black Collar is really innovative, good new young company that I've been supporting.
Jeremy's awesome.
MFT's been involved in Personal Defense Network and supporting the tour, as has Nemo for many years.
Yeah, same here. I've had all those guys on the show. Mission First is our official tactical accessories provider here on the Talking Lead podcast. If you want a discount there at Mission First, go there, use the code LEADHEAD, and you can get 20% off any of their products, their AR accessories, their holsters, their dump trays, their magazines. Which, have you tried their?
I have. So we ship this with either the smoke gray translucent or the solid black, the traditional. But that's what we ship with is the XD mag, and I don't have one right here. I think they're all in the other room. But we do. The one I was using a few minutes ago, I'm pretty sure it was that one. But most of the time we ship with the black. But I did get a small shipment of the smoke ones in, which are pretty cool. So I've been doing a lot of T&E myself, like playing around with the smoke ones. I know these work really, really well, and I've loved these since they came out. I was a big fan of the original magazine, so this is what we've shipped most of the guns with. And I want more personal experience with the smoke before I start shipping those out.
Well, you're gonna like it. You're not gonna have any problem with it. But yeah, go check them out. Avidity Arms, and then Walk the Talk America is it WTTA.org. .org, baby.
Yep. Or you can find us on all social medias at Walk the Talk US.
And on Instagrams and all that.
And X, yep.
X, yeah. And then Avidity Arms, same way.
Yep. Yeah, we're on. So we're not on X, to be honest. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Pincus Rob. I do share a lot of the Avidity Arms news through my X account and threads and everything else. But with Avidity Arms, primarily Instagram, the Facebook page, and then the website itself. And we have an extensive collection of media reviews. If people are just now hearing about the PD-10 or maybe want to see what people who aren't involved in making it or selling it have to say about it, there's a lot of media links at avidityarms.com with reviews and articles, videos, all that.
Right. If they want to buy one, is it just off your website, or can they go?
Well, that's what makes it hard is people say, well, I can't find one in my local shop. We get it. We're a small company. We're low volume. So most of the guns we ship to shops, thankfully, get sold, but we're not in a position where we have, 50,000 in a warehouse and shops have 5 of them in their inventory all the time. So you're probably not going to find one at your local shop. If you do, awesome, cool, check it out, put your hands on it. Maybe if they have a range demo one, which some range retail setups do, Cape Gun Works out in Massachusetts, Reno Guns and Range, they come to mind as places. Bristlecone Shooting Center in Denver is another one. But there are places out there that have demos you can use. For the most part, reach out to us. We will ship to any FFL, including U.S. territories. I just shipped 18 guns to Puerto Rico because I found out a few months ago that they just use our FFL and the ATF administrates it, and we don't have to worry about export when we ship to Puerto Rico. So we have 2 dealers down there now.
Very cool. Very cool. So again, go check them out, follow them, like them on the social medias. Let them know you heard about them here on the Talking Lead podcast. And I did see something cool that you offer is that you can get matching serial numbers if you do a PD-10 and an SAR.
So yeah, what we did is at launch of the A-SAR project, one of the things about people don't little inside baseball on way polymer frame guns are made. We don't have a polymer injection mold facility here. We do all the metal work. This is a 100% US made gun, no MIM parts. 95% of the work is done here in North Carolina, but we don't do the injection molding. So that's done by another company that does injection molding. They do it for a lot of industry well-known names, let's say, and they do it under what's called a variance. Well, in order for them to do that, the ATF has to be involved and approve it. And one of the things that has to happen is these serial number plates have to be logged ahead of time and then sent up in batches so that the ATF sort of knows what's going on when 2 different companies are involved in making a gun. With the A-SARs, we put the serial numbers on there ourselves. This is my personal demo, so this isn't exactly how it looks on the production ones, but we laser engrave these with a serial number. So I can put whatever serial number we want. The day that we make these lowers, we put the serial numbers on them. And what we did was we opened up an opportunity for people who were already owners of a PD-10 from our first year of shipping guns to go to the website, log in, and put down a reservation and a request to match their serial number on their PD10 on their A-SAR. So we had, I don't know, I think of the first batch, probably about 40, almost 50% of the first batch of A-SARs went to PD10 owners that wanted a serial number match. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was real cool.
And
awesome.
Moving forward, we can still do that. It's just there'll be a lag time. So because we may not make lowers again for 6 months at some point. So if somebody wants it, they can say, hey, I have PD10 with this serial number. Cool. The next time we run a batch, we'll make you a serial number matched rifle.
And the same with the rifles. They can go to get in touch with you guys, and if they want a rifle or lower.
That's harder, right? Because since we started at like 0 on the standard one, so if somebody buys A-SAR number 92, then the chances of us having PD10 92 still on the shelf is pretty slim, right? Sure. So we aren't going to get it, because of the way this works with these little plates that have to be sent to the injection mold guys. You have to have the pistol first, then we can match the rifle, because we do that here. The manufacturing process for the injection mold it's too much of a headache to get custom serial numbers there.
I was just talking about if they want to go and buy a rifle or a lower, just they want to buy one, they go to your website or just
sure. Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. AvidityArms.com. Same thing. Just hit, Rob at Avidity Arms, Mike at Avidity Arms, sales at Avidity Arms, info at Avidity Arms, or just hit us on the social media, DM, PM, and let us know you're interested, and we'll make arrangements to ship one out to your FFL.
Very cool. Guys, I appreciate you taking the time to be on today and updating the lead heads on Walk Talk America and Avidity Arms. You guys have some awesome things going on. You're innovative. We like innovative companies here. You guys are definitely innovating. I like that. And then you're also with Walk Talk America. You're helping the industry as a whole, and whether they see it or not, more of the insiders in our industry need to get behind you guys. And our listeners that want to get behind you, go to their website, WTTA.org, and they can do donations there if they want to donate. Are there opportunities for them to get involved with your organization? Absolutely. To work with
Absolutely.
You guys?
Yeah, helping us spread the word's the best thing, I think, like a like and a share kind of thing, but also use the resources, right? Like use the free and anonymous screenings, share them with your audience, with your community, put a link when you send out emails. If everybody's always looking for content, like quality content. So there's nothing to stop a guy who runs a school. If you run a school somewhere in this country and you have a newsletter that you send out with an email, put in a couple paragraphs about WTTA, put in a link to one of our videos that you think your audience should see, put in a link to the free and anonymous screenings. And in your own words, you can tell them why you think it's a good idea. All that stuff. I think people underestimate how powerful they can be just by spreading the word, especially if you have a business.
Most powerful way to get information out is word of mouth. Definitely.
100%.
At the barbecue this autumn, you're at the tailgate with your friends at the football game. Spread the word. It's always a good time.
100%.
Always a good time having you guys on too. I appreciate it again so much, especially with the short notice. Thank you. I wasn't even going to record one this week, and Mike hit me up. I was like, well, let's just do it this week. Might as well. I need to not be
that, brother.
So
yeah, glad to be able to jump in, and you're overdue for a range session with me.
I am. I know. We need to get together. I'm overdue with sitting down and having a drink with you session too.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Yeah, I missed out to hang out with you down in Knoxville, but we'll do it at some point. I need to get. I'm overdue for a Nashville trip, to be honest. So if I go over there, I'll reach out. You may get a text on a Thursday saying I'm there.
That's perfect. I love it. You're just up the road from me. Don't tease me with a good time.
There you go.
So Leadheads, that does it for another episode of the Talking Lead Podcast. Again, go and show Mike and Rob some love. Go to Avidity Arms, go to Walk Talk America, spread the word. If you have questions for them, you have trouble getting in touch with them, just shoot me an email, talkinglead@gmail.com. Be happy to forward it on. If you know somebody who's struggling with some mental health issues, let us know. Get them in touch with the website. There's an evaluation that people can do for themselves, self-evaluation test that you guys have on the website too. So if you just kind of want to give yourself, and it's anonymous, right?
Yep.
Information is not going to be shared. You don't have to worry about it being turned over to some government agency or anything like that. Completely free and anonymous. You can do a self-evaluation there as well. So I highly encourage that you guys do that. Coming up, we've got the AK Corner this month. we're going to be giving away one of these that I just held up, a Pioneer Arms Corps Hell Puppy Pro. It's not going to have the brace on it, but it will have an adapter to where you can put a brace. I've kind of decked mine out a little bit. And I just got these new 40-round mags from KCI. I met those guys at the Goals also, and they sent me a whole bunch of mags that I'm going to be trying out. Different sizes. Got a drum mag, got these 40-round mags. But this is the giveaway. You got to listen to last month's AK Corner to know the rules on how to enter to win this. But we're going to be giving that away just in a matter of days as you're listening to this, so your time is running out for that. But that's it. Episode Leadheads. Until the next episode, as always, keep your loved ones close.
And your firearms even closer.
I missed the briefing. My bad.
How many times you been?
Now I have to buy the next round. I buy the first round when we get together.
She said she gave me our destiny.